the board that was found up in southern Douglas County. Do you remember that portion?
Yes.
And you used a word in your question, thrown, and then you got quite a challenge from the defendant. Was that consistent where she would challenge you on things that were maybe peripheral?
Yes.
Can you give examples of that and what that meant to you during this interview?
Well, she used words like she was giving us keys, and then if I wasn't correct on my guesses, which I had asked her not to have me guess since I didn't know all the answers, she would get upset if I didn't guess correctly on whether it's Gannon's location or what she was doing when her phone was off, those sorts of things.
What do you mean by guesses? And give examples of what you mean when you use the word guesses.
So, especially during this later part of the interview when I was asking her about the blood, more than once, she would say that if I knew enough about this investigation, I should be able to say either where Gannon is or more details about what was going on that I couldn't guess too. So it was an effective way really for her to not answer my question and tell me that she knew things I didn't know.
Did that indicate to you fairly high intellect?
It did, and forward thinking, and that she knew that the questions that I was asking her would require a difficult answer, and so she was requiring the same out of me, something that was actually impossible for me to answer because I didn't know what she knew.
And as it relates to that, are you talking about Gannon's location at this particular time?
Yes.
Okay. Just after that portion of video where we were watching you asking her about the board with blood being found up in southern Douglas County, did you ask her, or I guess confront her with other pieces of evidence as well?
Yes.
All right. So the next section we're going to play is a shorter section. It's at 4 hours, 7 minutes, and 13 seconds through 4 hours, 10 minutes, and 13 seconds.
Do you know why I told you about that? I normally don't do this. Tell everybody all the evidence against them. Why do you think?
I don't know.
Because I think if you're to weigh this on, there's enough probable cause. A judge in Colorado Springs in El Paso has signed a probable cause warrant for first-degree murder. And all this evidence, and I'm telling you about the ones that I know about, and that's before you do, all the phone stuff, et cetera, and then versus you taking a chance that you're going to get out.
I'm not taking a chance for nothing because I didn't do anything, sir. Okay, sir.
If you say you didn't do anything, do you know what an innocent person would do? I have had plenty of innocent people sitting in your chair. You know what an innocent person would do? They would be freaking out. You were not freaking out.
Yeah, right. You think I haven't freaked out?
I heard you freak out on the phone one time.
Think I haven't freaked out for days? You can't judge the way I freak something out one way and another way.
I've had the wrong person in a room like this before. Okay. And trust me, if they had any idea who did it, they would tell me.
Okay, well,
that makes no sense. And no jury will buy, no jury's going to buy that you sit here with an answer that somebody else took Gannon, that all this head wound and all this stuff happened in there. Do you think I don't know what I'm talking about?
Sir, I never question anything.
But you must, because you're taking a huge chance, Letecia.
Sir, I'm not taking any chance.
How are you not taking
because
a chance?
I know the man upstairs knows I did not do anything.
Well, he's not going to be on the jury.
Okay. All right, we're not going to go there with that. We're not going to go there.
We're going to sensible people who we're going to present evidence in front of.
Let me tell you what. There's a higher power.
There is.
Higher power. We'll make sure.
I believe in the higher power as well.
I'm glad you did. That really makes me feel good. There knows. I'm serious. You know.
But Letecia, this comes down to common sense.
I do.
And these prosecutors, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about who you're going to be sitting in front of.
Okay.
And if you're going to take a chance that they're not going to listen to all this evidence, all this blood, all these stories that you've told about Gannon, and that you have the key to finding him and you don't do it, there's nobody else to prosecute.
Okay.
Why won't you go there?
What else am I going to say?
The easiest thing to tell me is the last time you saw Gannon.
I've already told you I'm not. Okay.
But then what do I need to go through again the other things that might have happened to Gannon? Where did you gently place Gannon?
What?
I don't know how to phrase it.
What are you talking about?
I don't know, because I don't know where he is. If you want me to use a different verb or whatever, I'm struggling.
I've got it paused at 4 hours, 10 minutes, and 13 seconds. Why have you shifted tactics here to trying to now find Gannon's location as to getting descriptions of what happened to him?
Well, she seems to be more reluctant to answer questions now. And she showed me with the particle board. She got upset when I said she threw it. And as I said earlier, she gets upset if I guess. So I tried different verbs like placing it, setting it, those sorts of things. And then she will settle back down. So That's why I'm trying different ways to get her to communicate to me any other clue that might have happened with Gannon. So I'm just trying yet a different tactic again.
Including clues potentially towards his location?
Yes.
Okay. When you go down this particular path of talking about last place that she may have seen Gannon, did she give you any keys that helped find Gannon?
No. And I had already asked her in the previous section who the last person was with Gannon, since she was saying it wasn't her. We had been through the angel routine, and then I was trying to see if she would push it to anybody else, and she's not. So since she's not pushing it to anybody else, she's basically saying it's her. So I just want her to say where she last saw him, whether it was in the house, whether it was at the Petco, whether it was at Palmer Lake, to give us some sort of clue of her last sighting of him.
You made a statement in that section that you don't normally tell people that you're interviewing about all of the evidence. One, why do you not typically do that?
We don't typically do that because we don't want the defendant or whoever we're in front of to testify falsely to something in case we give them too much evidence and then they say something they didn't do. Also, we don't want them to know what we know because I want their statement to be pure in that they're not just repeating what I say. With this interview, we had gone far enough to where we would do something called the collaborative interview, to where we bring the person in with us and we share as much as we can to try to get them to collaborate and cooperate with us, since I'm working towards a solution and I'm trying to bring her in almost as an investigator to help me find out what happened to Gannon. So the more facts that I introduce to her slowly, I'm hoping that she'll start cooperating with me.
So you anticipated my follow-up question is, why were you doing that in this case? But you just answered that. As this discussion sort of develops, does she then talk about faith in God and that kind of thing?
She does.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and play that. It's basically from this point forward to 4 hours, 14 minutes, and 6 seconds.
The teacher, this is all about you. You're the one caught up in it, though. You're the one with all the evidence stacked against you.
Well,
Help yourself right now.
I thought.
Why would you not?
How did I do that?
Tell me what happened.
So what happened? Well, I don't know.
The way you
So I'm
described,
going to stand up for a moment.
absolutely. The wounds that you described to him don't even come close
Okay,
to the blood in the.
that's what you think.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, this is what people that do this for a living tell me.
Okay.
Again, I wasn't there, but a little gash on his head
Okay. Good.
doesn't explain at all that stuff that's in there.
Okay.
But do you want to go with that? Because when you walk out of here, the last thing on record you're going to have is what you told me. And I would love to be your storyteller.
Okay.
I would love to tell the true story. It will help you. You believe in that higher power? You
Oh, I do. That's why. You
What
want to know
about the
why?
truth? Do you study the truth?
You want to know why I'm not sitting here like going crazy, freaking out, putting on an emotional show like I've seen people involved in this situation put on fake cries and all that? Because I know God knows.
Okay.
I mean,
But what about the truth? You study the same Bible, the same God. It tells a lot about truth in there, and you have not told many truths in this whole thing.
well, I don't know that. Guess what? But let me tell you what happened this morning when I woke up. When I woke up this morning, I watched a story about Ron Gannon. So he started this show. He ended up like getting talked down to, bullied online, treated like crap, accused of things he didn't do. And that's where he went to the accusation part. And so he went down this whole trail talking about how accusation, how this did to him, what he had to go through, and all that. But in the end, he kept his faith in Jesus Christ. You know about the story of Paul, you know about Saul in the Bible. Okay, I can walk you through a lot in the Bible. If you know what I'm talking about. So he turned those accusations into just keeping steadfast and staying strong, and into believing God's going to do this and keeping whatever. Because, you know, in the Bible, they persecuted a lot of Christians, right? A lot of them for things they didn't do right. But, you know, there's a lot of stories where God made sure they were okay. So when I woke up this morning, I literally decided, God, you can take this, and you can either A, bring him home, bring him to the front step, drop him off, so that I can please never have to worry about this again.
Right.
Or you can let me stay focused on believing in you, not in him. Just the truth will come out. And it's okay, because I don't want to sit here and accuse all these people of whatever. I'm not going to turn the same accusations against them for saying this and saying that, not believing this, not believing that. The judge's going to sit there and say, I know, I did not hurt Gannon.
But that, I get,
So I've got it paused at 4 hours, 14 minutes and 6 seconds. Did you go on from this basically to then try to get her to tell you more details about when she last saw Gannon?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to jump to that section at 4 hours, 17 minutes and 18 seconds. And we will play through 4 hours, 20 minutes and 3 seconds.
go a different way. If you did something bad to Gannon.
I did
I'm
not.
just saying, we go if. If you did something bad to Gannon, could you ever admit it? I'm saying,
I'm not going to go.
this is not a trick.
But I'm not going to go answer that question because I did not do anything bad.
The reason why I ask you that is the people that I've worked with are actually put in prison for life. I've told them, and I've told people, the families of these victims, I said, if you put Harold in a room and you take everybody else out, we have absolute evidence that he pushed his wife off a cliff and that he dropped a car on his little wife and he was convicted. I said, even if you clear everybody out and you just have Harold in a mirror, Harold was a God follower, Christian like you are. I said he could never admit that he did that to heated life.
Well, I'm sorry that, what's his name, Harold? Harold is that type of person because a God follower, I'm not judging him. I'm saying in order for you, you have to repent your sins to God, okay? And you have to put yourself there. And in order to repent your sins to God, it means also you have to lay them all down on the cross. And like, my sins are laid down. And it is not involving hurting, harming, or killing you. So I'm sorry that Harold or whatever his name is has like a different approach.
I think you have probably a more serious problem than Harold does. You know where an 11-year-old is, and I'm here telling you we could go find him, and you are not giving us his location, alive or dead. So what Harold did was push a 50-year-old woman off a cliff. It was an awful thing, and the parents hated losing Tony. But Tony had lived a full life, as full as you can till 50. It was still tragic. Gannon's 11. Gannon,
That doesn't matter age, you're right. It's tragic, right?
yeah.
You just said
And
that.
if you had the
Tragic.
answer, you would give it to us.
I don't know where he is.
But you won't answer my question about the last time you saw him.
Listen, sir, anything I say to you, you're not going to listen to me. You're going to take.
I'm not going to twist things, Letecia.
To be honest with you, I can give you speculation.
Okay,
like
give me
with everyone
speculation.
else.
Please.
I can give you
I'll take
speculation.
speculation.
Speculation is getting aside. Speculation is being with someone who is not willing to hurt him until they get something they want.
Why wouldn't they make a demand then? Why would they hold an 11-year-old kid? That's more
That's-
sadistic.
So as we talked about, we stopped it at 4 hours, 20 minutes and 3 seconds. Why did you start this section out with asking, could she admit it? What was in your mind when you asked that question?
When it's a familial matter and someone that you really care about is the person that you've harmed, I haven't yet had someone who's admitted to me that they were responsible for that harm or homicide.
And so that's why you're asking that particular question?
Yes.
Okay. And then does it devolve back into now he's been kidnapped by some group?
Yes.
Did you then confront her again about the blood on the wall?
Yes.
Did she bring up a miscarriage that she apparently had had sometime prior?
She does.
All right, let's watch that section. It starts at 4 hours, 21 minutes and 47 seconds and goes through 4 hours, 23 minutes and 47 seconds.
And Your Honor, Mr. Allen and I.
All right.
Mr. Allen?
Yes, thank you, Judge. Picking up from where we left off, we were going to jump to the confrontation about blood on the wall and being compared to a miscarriage, and it's going to jump to 4 hours, 21 minutes and 47 seconds. And we will play through 4 hours, 23 minutes and 47 seconds. So exactly 2 minutes worth of video.
You had nothing to do with harming Gannon. Why would you clean up the blood that's on the wall?
So you're saying you've never had anything happen in your house and you cleaned it up? Never. Like, you've never had, like,
Why would you cut out the carpet?
nosebleeds. The carpet?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was going to get more carpet. The carpet has nothing to do with cutting it out. It's getting smell. It stunk. I couldn't breathe. None of us could breathe.
Did you say that Lena helped you clean up some of the blood on the wall?
Lena always helped us clean up everything. Lena helped us clean up the light switch. Lena helped us clean up when Gannon had a nosebleed. Okay?
But for this occasion, she helped with that.
Now you're going to walk me back through what we've already talked about. So you're now going to go be like, oh, an 8-year-old this and an 8-year-old that. There was all the time. Gannon was bleeding all the time. He'd have a nosebleed randomly at the drop of a dime. He'd bite his fingers, bleed all the time.
Would it help if I gave you a picture of the wall of what all showed up on it?
That's not going to get me to say anything to you because I didn't do anything.
But what I'm trying to appeal to, though, is again, you weighing your options right now before we're gone,
Sir,
because you're taking a big risk, Letecia.
sir, I believe in higher power. And that higher power is going to show the entire world. And when it does, I would never have to work a day in my life again. And that's going to happen. Guaranteed. Because I did not hurt, I did not dispose, kill, whatever you want to call these things that you're going to name out as verbs.
So why did you confront her with the blood cleanup and, for instance, the carpet cutout?
We had talked about it before, but this is what I'm left with to speak with her about, is the evidence in the case to see if she'll move from where she was.
Were you trying to give her an opening to give you more details?
Yes, and I don't remember if I had brought up before Lana's participation in this, but I wanted to see.
Lena, you mean?
Yeah, Lana's participation, and to see how she would react to that.
Again, is it consistent throughout the interview that she would resist those opportunities when it related to the specifics of the crime itself?
Yes, and again, she said she sees the pathway where these questions would be going, and she says she's not going to go there.
Appreciating where you want to get to.
Correct.
From your perception, was that logical thought process?
Very.
Shortly after this portion of the video, do you confront her with trying to get information about, hey, there's a boy out there. Help me find him. Help me get him home.
Yes.
Let's jump to that section. 4 hours, 24 minutes, and 29 seconds. And we will play through 4 hours, 32 minutes, and 50 seconds. So about 8 minutes. Judge, I'm not sure if you want to allow Mr. Grusing to step down during this 8-minute portion.
Thanks.
So starting it at 4 hours, 24 minutes, and 29 seconds.
And about why would you act like this when there's a boy out there?
I want him home.
Then tell me how to do it.
I want to help you. I don't know. I don't.
But see, that's where easy questions should be easy to answer.
I just said I don't know. That's an easy answer.
The easy answer is tell me the very last time you laid eyes on him. Where was he? Was he laying down? Was he standing up? Was he sitting? Was he walking to a car? Where was? Give me your very last image of Gannon. That's an easy question. You have to remember your last image of Gannon. Letecia, what was he doing? Why would you not answer that?
Because I've given you.
No, you haven't told me exactly what you saw when you saw him for the very last time. Did you see the back of his head? Did you see his face? What was his expression? Did he say goodbye to you? Tell me of your last, I wish I could see in your head right now. Your very last image is there, but you won't tell me. Why won't you tell me?
Because it's nothing bad.
Well, then tell me. If it's nothing bad, you would tell me. Image of Gannon.
I don't
Please?
have any bad images
I
again.
didn't say it was bad.
I don't have any.
What's the very last picture of seeing Gannon alive or not alive that you have in your brain?
He is alive. I'm not
Then
going to say
tell me the last time you saw him. What did you see? Letecia, like you said earlier.
Okay.
Being a good person, you didn't hurt him, you didn't do all this. I'm repeating it back to you. Why could you not tell me then? If all that is true, you know the last time you saw him. What would that hurt to tell me? Do you kind of think?
No, I don't.
Well, then tell me.
I don't need any kinds of.
What is wrong with that question?
There's nothing wrong with the question. I've already made it clear that I wasn't going to answer more questions
You've never answered this one.
because you have already predetermined what you want in your brain along with everyone else.
Why do you care about what's in my brain?
So you just asked me about mine.
Yeah, because your brain's the only one that counts here. It doesn't matter what's in my brain. The very last time you saw Gannon, where was he? What was he doing?
Did y'all put a report out?
There's no need to put it. Can you please answer that?
You automatically have a predetermined thing in your brain.
If you give me something else, I'll go
Yeah,
there.
no, that, wow.
Why do you care about my brain, Letecia? Yours is the one that matters. What's the last thing you
I'm gonna tell you
saw?
one more time. I did not hurt.
I didn't ask
harm,
that. I did not
anything
ask that. I
else.
don't care. What is the last
Have
image you
you
have?
checked all these places I've been?
Why don't you answer that question?
Why don't you
I'm just
answer me?
curious.
Have you checked all these places I've been, and where was Gannon? Was he there? Doesn't that have to like sneak it in the brain for a little bit to say,
You're going to live with it for the rest of your life, Letecia. Why don't you tell me today?
I'm not living with anything horrible in my brain. I'm not.
Okay, well then it should be an easy question.
I've given you the answer.
Of the last time you saw him? No, you haven't. But I'm afraid it's not the image that you want to be left with.
What? Sir, that's not going to convince me to say something that I didn't
Okay,
do.
then maybe it is the image. Then tell me. Why else would you not tell me?
Because you keep going with the same question, and if you've already
And you won't answer it.
but you predetermined yourself.
No.
When I thought you were going to help, that was different. But you predetermined yourself.
You didn't
for
tell
the
me
thing.
what the last thing you saw was, even with your answer there. And that's fine. If you want to tell me the thing with Angel, I
I'm not
don't
going to
care.
say anything other than saying, it will shock everyone. But I will promise you, I won't have to worry about nothing the rest of my life because I didn't do it.
But you did. What's going to come out? That you didn't tell the FBI who took Gannon, if that's your deal? How is that going to shock everybody?
Okay. Okay, sir. Okay.
I didn't think you were guilty until you don't answer the last time you saw him.
Sir,
I
you
have-
came in this
listen.
morning
No, I did not.
and you automatically thought that. You automatically thought that already.
I was willing to listen if you were going to give me evidence to the contrary. But I have talked to many people who have seen someone disappear. It never goes away. That last image. Is
Oh,
gone.
well,
It
you
never
know,
goes away, and you've got it in your mind, and you won't tell me.
right.
There's only one reason you won't tell me.
You're right. People do have, when people do bad things, their images stay in their brain. You're right.
Bad or good. So a lot of these dads didn't know when the last time they were going to see their daughter.
I mean,
And they still remember it like it was yesterday, 14 years
oh
later.
yeah,
You remember the last time you saw Gannon.
yeah.
So tell me what you saw.
Nothing negative.
So tell me what you saw.
I saw nothing negative. I saw nothing again.
You're telling me nothing. You're saying nothing.
Okay.
Just tell me what you did see, the positive.
Gannon. I'm fine. Gannon.
Where was he? Was he
So
standing?
you said, tell me what I see. I'm just going to tell you
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
how Gannon was.
Okay.
Okay. Gannon was fine. Gannon, nothing was wrong with Gannon. Gannon was happy. Gannon is my favorite stepchild. My favorite. I know everybody says they have favorites and things like that, or they say not really necessarily favored or whatever, but he was.
Do you remember how
He
we
was
talked earlier?
definitely.
Remember how we
always-
talked earlier about when I ask you a question and you go around?
I'm not answering that question.
You're
for you
saying, you're
because
giving me qualities again, and you're not saying what
I'm
you
not-
saw.
I'm
You're
not-
saying he's a
sir.
favorite stepson.
sir,
What did you see?
Yeah.
Was he standing or
I
sitting?
didn't do anything to Gannon.
I didn't say you did. I said your last memory.
Okay, well, I didn't do anything to Gannon, so.
Do you have it in your mind right now?
Nope.
Seeing him for the last time.
Oh, well, it's not going to be the last time, but
The last time you saw him. Do
It's
you
not
have
gonna be
that?
the last
Do you
time.
have that picture in your mind?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
I know you're really good at what you do. I appreciate that. I know that, but I didn't do this. This is
Well, why
why-
don't you tell me the answer to that question?
Because you
It's
want.
not-
Why would
I'm
I
not con-
ask questions for you?
But that is not a hard question to answer. I'm not saying did you kill him. I'm not saying did you put him in a forest. I'm not saying did you put him in a dumpster. This is just your last image. You've got to have it.
My images are happy lives. That's what it will
That's not
always
what you see
be.
in your brain.
Okay. Well, see, now you know my brain.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
You have an image of the last time you saw Gannon.
Okay.
If you didn't hurt him, why won't you tell me?
I already told you I didn't hurt
I
it.
know, but if you didn't, why would that image be a problem for you?
No, I don't have a problem with anything.
Then tell me. I'm not accusing you of anything, Letecia. Just tell me the last time you saw him.
At the very beginning, I'm sorry.
Not up yet.
Oh.
You go ahead.
I'm going to ask the empty chair, Judge.
Okay.
The voice from behind me would have been interesting. Mr. Grusing, at the very beginning of this portion of the video, you start out with easy questions and easy answers. What was your purpose of that statement?
What do you mean? Easy questions, easy answers?
Well, easy questions should be easy to answer, basically.
Yeah, again, if she's saying that she's innocent of this, then the questions that I'm asking should be very easy for her to answer.
Did she give you any of these easy answers?
No.
Again, here, it appears that you're sort of pushing back when she's saying, well, what's in your mind? Did she appear to be throughout this entire interview preoccupied with what other people were thinking about her?
Yes, and that was consistent with the phone calls. And what I'm trying to keep her from doing is manipulating her answer to see what I want to hear. I just want to hear what she knows to be true.
This whole issue about did you all put out a reward, that kind of stuff. This entire section, was this another example of her deflecting away from the thrust of information you're trying to gather?
Yes.
Right after this, does she then actually challenge you about, are you going to find Gannon?
Yes.
All right, let's watch that portion. Basically, from this section on through 4 hours, 35 minutes and 56 seconds. So just a couple minutes. So if you're okay sitting there, so I don't ask an empty chair questions.
This is an easy question compared to all the other ones we've done. Please.
Are you going to find Gannon?
Yes.
Well, I would rather spend our time doing that because I don't have him. I didn't do anything with him, to him, or hurt him.
Okay.
And I appreciate all your work.
You can help us more than anybody on this planet. You can help me right now find Gannon. Let's start with the one question I asked you.
I don't trust anymore for you because
Well, just tell me why you don't want to answer that.
I've already, it doesn't matter. I can tell you I last saw Gannon when I went to the store this morning, and it could be legit true, and you would still be like, he was not at the store. I mean,
I will be able to tell if you say what he's wearing, or not even what he's wearing, how he was walking, you will remember this. And just you not answering it means you remember it.
no, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you now are a psychologist.
No, behavior analysis.
Okay, good. I'm glad you have behavior analysis. Okay. I appreciate you having me here. What else do you want me to say or do? I mean, what else?
You don't want to answer that one.
I don't want to tell you anything else because
Why? If it helps find Gannon, why would you not tell me?
because you already predetermined.
I didn't say you're
What
hurting
you
or
think-
anything. I think you know where he is, though.
You already predetermined this. You have.
The scene does tell the story,
Okay,
yes.
so if that's your story, then I'm not going to keep saying anything because I know that is not the case. So if I keep saying anything to you, you're just going to keep blah, 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 blah about it. And I've been nothing but respectful to you. So I'm trying to remain respectful to you overall because I don't have any disrespect for you. I don't treat people like that. But putting me in a situation where I'm like saying to you, I cannot say anything else because you've expressed you predetermined what you think. You've already done that. So no matter what I say, I legit could take you right to Gannon and he would be standing there and you would still say to me, well, that's not him. Or you would say something else. Just
Do you know how good that would be for you?
Oh, trust me. Yes.
Then why do you care what I
You know
think?
how good that would be for me? Absolutely.
Why do you care what I think? You should not care at all what I think. You said I wouldn't think. If you could take us to Gannon right now, that
So this idea where she's saying she doesn't have him, did you later learn that that was actually a true statement
Yes.
because of where Gannon was ultimately found?
Correct.
Later on in this interview, did you confront her with her ability to dodge questions and spin stories?
Yes.
All right, let's jump to that section at 4 hours and 39 minutes and 33 seconds. Bless you. And we will play through 4 hours and 46 minutes and 21 seconds. So about 7 minutes if he's allowed to come down, Judge.
I think I can handle it this time.
Okay.
you got away with spinning stories and dodging questions your whole life.
So now you know your whole life.
I can look back a little bit. I don't know you when you were 5 or 13 or 16. But I think something bad happened and you've been able to avoid trouble. But it doesn't happen in this case.
Okay, sir.
These stories that you told are much worse for you than if you had just said, the best thing you could have said is, Gannon just went, and that's it. I'm not saying anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But you describing all these injuries to him, even to us today, is awful.
There's not injuries like that.
Yes, you talked about it.
There's all the time. You raise children and they never got hurt. Like they never.
Not all on the last day they're seen alive.
Was. You're making it out to be like some whatever. That's not even how it was.
Tell me how it was then.
Gannon and I are very close. Okay?
But see, that's what you don't do. You say generalizations when I ask you, how was it? And
Why? I don't even know what you're asking me.
the injury that caused that pool in the corner. It's not a little scratch on his
Okay, why
head.
don't you test it and see what day it came from? If that's what you're telling me, why don't you test it and see what day?
Oh, it didn't happen on Monday.
No, I'm
It happened on
asking
Saturday.
I'm asking you. You are the one who are telling me, no matter what I say, you're telling me it's your way or no way. So why don't you tell me?
Well, I'm saying it's a significant enough injury that he was not going to be normal after that. Yeah.
Oh God.
That's what they told me.
Okay, well, that is awful. That people aren't normal after anything like that.
It's a significant
Because I had
injury.
puddles of blood. Remember that I had
We're not
puddles of
talking
blood
about you. We're talking about 11.
that I did, and there was no significant injury that I died.
Do you not find that coincidental?
But,
The blood on the wall and by his bed.
the
Not
blood,
after it.
the blood that you or your team allow people to be in the house.
That has no bearing on it.
Okay, well, if it doesn't, then okay.
It doesn't.
Okay, so, okay. Maybe check one of them.
Are you ready to tell me about
Maybe check one of them. Because
I bet you they can tell me the last time they saw Gannon, even though it was
that's not
months
the
before.
question.
I bet Al can tell you the last time he saw Gannon, even though he didn't know that was going to be the last time. I guarantee you he's got an image of Gannon. You were the last time with him, Letecia.
Okay.
What do I need to say to help you? I'm serious.
You do not want to help me.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't. You want me to tell you what you want to hear. That's what you want.
No.
Yes.
I have never wanted people to tell me what I want to hear. If it doesn't lead me to finding Gannon or the truth of this matter, I could care less what it is. Like I said, most of the time, I'm wrong. I have to have people like you tell me the truth. You didn't have anything to hide. You tell me your last
Don't
image of
have
me.
anything to hide.
Then tell me. That's not a guilt or innocence question. Just your last image of Gannon. Okay, now you don't have to tell me the last time you saw him. Just your last image in your head.
Hmm.
What's the last image in your head you have of him? No. Or was he?
Yeah, you said that's image. That's the
I mean,
image.
was he sitting? Was he standing? Is he laying down? What's he doing?
Walking
Towards you or away from you?
away.
Do you have any questions for me?
Hmm?
Any questions for me? No, that's for me. Have I not asked you a question that I should be asking you? Anything? I don't have the answers to this. No, I have feelings that I can't talk about right now. Right, anything?
No.
Anything?
Something.
Is there anything I need to ask you that I haven't?
Mhm.
Just be it that. I don't think I need anything.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Sure.
Well,
Let's pause now at 4 hours, 46 minutes and 21 seconds. As to when you both leave the room and are off camera, what happened outside in the hallway?
I believe she went to the bathroom.
Do you then come back into the room with her?
We might have opened the door, but I don't think we do any more interviews in this room.
Okay. Why'd you go down this path of confronting her with dodging questions and spinning stories?
We had talked about it before, and she had told me that she has done that in the past as far as talking in circles, dodging questions. And I just wanted to bring that back around, something that she had told me to see if we could go straight forward just once with this last image question I had.
Did she ever give you a straightforward answer to the last image in her head?
No.
Throughout this long interview, did she exhibit that same sort of trait of dodging questions or spinning stories?
Yes.
That's appeared to you in your perception to be a calculated move on her part.
Yes.
Your final contact with her is back in this room, and it starts at 4:47:43 and then goes through 4:49:17. We'll jump to that now.
Too soon. Again, like I said, you're going to have to go to whatever jail that holds you in. Colorado's got the warrant, so they're going to transport you.
Okay.
You have anything else for me? I think we've talked a lot today, but if you have something you want to say, I'll sit here for another 4 hours.
Where's the warrant?
The warrant's in the system. It's in the NCIC is what they call it. That's what they picked you up on today, was the arrest warrant.
Okay.
So you're going to be going back there. Anything else? First degree murder for Gannon Stauch. That's what I was trying to come in here with you to help you. If we find Gannon, that makes a big difference. We'll let you go. If he's alive, you might as well try it. I can't speak for the district attorney. I'm not an attorney. I'm an investigator. If he's alive and you can get us Gannon, yes. Good things will happen to you today versus getting shipped back to Colorado.
I'm going to talk to you about that.
So we're now at the end of that recorded interview, essentially. Is she trying to have another off-camera discussion with you?
Yes.
Did you, in fact, have a short discussion with her off-camera?
Yes.
What happened in that discussion?
Right outside the door, we now had police officers waiting to transport. So there were probably 4 or 5 law enforcement around us. And she said something in a small voice about North Carolina that I couldn't hear. And I asked her to repeat it. And she said that she and I should go to North Carolina. And I asked her, is Gannon in North Carolina? And she didn't answer.
Was that basically the extent of that interaction?
Yes, what I recall.
Okay. In looking back at your, even your recorded phone calls that we've heard throughout this trial and in this long interview, are there any, I guess, regrets that you have as to your approaches, ways that you may have been able to get more information about what happened again?
She brought up Quincy Brown to me, I think, within an hour or so of our interview. And then she said something to the effect of, if I wasn't going to talk about that, then it wasn't any use going forward. And in looking at the phone calls with Al, that's where she described most of Gannon's injuries, or a lot of them. And looking back and playing it through, maybe I should have gone more down the Quincy Brown angle to see if she would have been willing to disclose more things. That's the only thing I can think of.
The short portions that we didn't play through your direct examination here, were there any surprises in those portions that are different from the stuff that we saw in the video that we did watch?
No.
Did she act consistently in those portions to what we saw here?
Yes.
You, in 2 different sections that we watched, you delved into mental health questions. Do you remember those?
Yes.
Throughout all of your interaction with her, both through those recorded phone calls and in this interview, did she ever express any history with severe mental health issues, diseases, defects, anything like that?
She did not.
Did she ever talk about sexual abuse that she allegedly suffered as a child?
No.
Did she ever point to specific people in her life, family, that she alleged carried out sexual abuse against her?
No.
Did she ever give you any descriptions of any commitments to hospitals?
No.
Did she appear to understand the gravity of the situation when you were talking with her, that this is a first-degree murder charge?
Very well.
In what ways were you able to develop that idea?
Well, as I said earlier, she's able to see where different lines of questioning go and what would be damaging for her to answer truthfully. So, whether we're talking about evidence in the case or what happened to Gannon or her role or involvement, she stops that line of questioning before it goes down something that would be damning towards her in testimony.
So are you saying resisting giving more incriminating statements about the crime itself?
Correct.
Did that appear to be a calculated move on her part?
Yes.
Throughout your entire interaction with her, both through the consensual recorded phone calls and this long interview, did you ever observe her to change personalities?
No,
Did she ever talk in a Spanish accent?
no,
Did she ever demand to be called any other names besides the name that you knew her as?
no,
Did she ever use the name Taylor,
no,
Jasmine,
no,
Harmony,
no,
Christina,
no,
Little Lucia,
no,
Maria Sanchez?
no.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
And that's all I have. I just need to disconnect this computer from here so that Mr. Cook has a clean podium.
Okay.
And you can, yeah, I was going to say turn off the screen if you'd like.
Mr. Cook, cross-examination.
Thank you. Mr. Gruesing, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good, thank you.
So how long did you work for the FBI?
A few months short of 25 years.
25 years? Were you always in the Colorado office, or were you like a lot of other agents early in your career, you were in different states?
Always Colorado.
Always, okay. And at one point near the end of the interview, Ms. Stauch referred to you as something and you corrected herself. You corrected her and said you were a behavior analysis.
She said something like, I'm a psychologist.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm in behavior analysis.
Okay. And is that generally what you did throughout the majority of your career?
No.
Okay. What else were your other assignments? And I know you already told Mr. Allen this, but I have to hear things a few times before they sink
No
in.
worries. So I was a special agent, and I was assigned to the criminal side for the FBI. There's a terrorism side or counterintelligence and a criminal side. And for my last 23 years, I was a criminal agent for them. So I was never a supervisor, it would be similar to being a detective for a local police department.
Okay. Now, you told Ms. Stauch during the interview that you had been contacted by the main office for the FBI and told to go do this interview with her in South Carolina. Is that correct?
Yes, I think I told her, I was asked by the Colorado Springs office to come investigate initially and then also to go out to South Carolina.
Okay. Whose decision was it to you be the one that goes in and does this almost 5-hour interview?
I think it was up in the air early, whether it would be an El Paso investigator and myself or just myself. And I don't remember how it came just to be me, but it ended up just being me.
Okay. And have you done a lot of these interviews over your career?
Yes.
Now, before we got into the audio videotape interview, we were listening to some additional phone calls with Gannon's father and Ms. Stauch.
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall in one of these interviews, it looks like it was February 19th, 2020. It began about 12:10 p.m. Do you recall that interview that was recorded?
Yes, briefly.
Okay. And were you there for that one?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember at the end of that conversation, it said, Letecia said that her guess would be that Gannon was not in Colorado. When asked how she knew, she said, quote, because Tisha didn't hurt him, didn't dispose of him or anything like that, okay? It goes on, so Tisha was in Colorado with nothing, and you guys have run up all these places where y'all think I did or whatever, and you haven't found Gannon. Do you recall her at one point referring to herself as Tisha?
I do.
Okay. Now, generally, somebody in that conversation would say I, but in this situation, she's referring to herself in the third person.
Correct.
Okay. Did you find that a little bit off?
Not really.
Okay. Well, what if I started questioning you right here instead of saying, I've got a couple questions for you, Mr. Gruesing? What if I said, Mr. Cook has a couple questions for you, Mr. Gruesing. Mr. Cook would like to proceed. Would that be a little bit off?
It depends on who you are and how well I knew you.
So it'd be kind of strange if I was up here cross-examining you and I was using the third person to refer to myself.
It would be unusual, yes.
Mr. Cook has some more questions for you.
Sounds good.
Couldn't help it. Um, Now, with respect to the Google searches we talked about, or you talked about with Letecia, I don't like my stepson, you recall those, and
I do.
discussing that with Mr. Allen. Were you able to pull up the content that was retrieved during these searches, or what is the scope of what information you were able to pull up in this metadata or whatever it is?
So yeah, I was quite a bit removed from that. We had a computer specialist that was looking into her phone and would send us sanitized results.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't see what the kickback was or
That's correct.
or anything. You just could see the search. Okay. And you don't know when these searches were made.
I don't.
Okay. And that's not because you didn't look. It's just because that information was not saved.
Yeah, I was told I didn't know you're talking about when her actual search happened on her phone.
Yeah. When she, Googled in, I don't like my stepson. What do I do about it? Like if that was in 2018 or was it?
Correct. Yeah, it was no timestamp date was given to me for those searches.
Okay. So some of these searches could have been January 27th of 2020, and some of them could have been in 2018, or some of them could have been actually after January 27th,
Correct.
but before the phone was seized.
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of any searches coming back saying, what do I do if I don't like my stepson? And the answer being, stab him 17 times, plunge and force, strike him 4 times in the head and shoot him in the head?
No,
That'd be some pretty bad advice, wouldn't it?
that would not be good advice. You're right.
Now, sometimes, how many different stories did Miss Stauch tell? I hear at one point you said you were asking her on the video and told her that she's told you about 7 different stories. Do you recall that?
Yeah, I think I was throwing out an approximate number.
Okay. And then Mr. Allen asked you one time, and he said you can't even count how many stories she gave.
Yes, because he brought up variations of stories, which would legitimately count as another story. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But we're not talking about an infinite number of stories. I mean, you could go back and
Correct.
Basically,
We
there
could count
were-
them up.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there were, between 5 and 10 main theme stories we're dealing with.
That sounds correct.
And in one interview, something may change a little bit, but there was 5 to 10 main theme stories.
Sounds right.
Okay. Now, during some of the interviews, Miss Stauch or Letecia, she seemed like she made a lot of eye contact, was pretty engaged near the beginning. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And then there was a part for about 30 minutes or so in the middle where she didn't even look up. She hung her head the whole time. Do you recall that part?
Yes.
And her voice was a lot lower. You could hardly even hear her. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Is almost 5 hours a long time to be in an interview room like that?
It just depends on the situation.
What was your goal when you went into this interview room with Letecia? Was it to find out who Gannon was? Was it to get a confession to be used to prosecute her later? Both? I mean, what was the actual game plan when you went in?
Yeah, probably both. I would say primarily is to find what happened to Gannon. And as she had spoken with Al on the phone, that she had given hints or clues. And even if we were to get some of those, that would be worth the 5 hours.
And would you say that you came away from this interview as far as getting a confession and being able to find Gannon more or less empty-handed?
It went about as I expected it would.
And you weren't able to get enough information or any information out to be able to locate Gannon?
That's correct.
Can I have just a second, Your Honor?
Okay.
I think that's all I have. Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
right.
Mr. Grusin.
Thank you.
Mr. Grusing, you were asked about the references that the defendant used third person to say her name.
Yes,
Have you been around other people who are self-absorbed who also talk about themselves in the third person?
I have.
Does that indicate in your mind any concerns about mental health capacity?
No,
Did that cause you any concern about this defendant as to her mental health capacity?
it did not.
Did it indicate in your mind that she was exhibiting a separate personality
No,
or acting as a separate person?
no.
You were asked about the demeanor change of the defendant in the interview, where in the beginning she's making lots of eye contact, perhaps even almost flirting with you. How would you attribute her demeanor at the beginning?
Conversational. I would even say hopeful on her part that she might be able to provide me with a story that I might take away.
Potentially hoping to manipulate your involvement in the investigation.
Leading.
Yeah, sustained. You can rephrase.
Sure. Any other indicators for you as to what she may have been trying to get done there?
Yes, as I told her throughout, she was more concerned about what I was thinking than telling me what was happening. And she continued to do that throughout the interview, and I continued to admonish her to just tell me what she knew, not what she thought I was thinking.
Okay. You were asked at the very end of the cross-examination, did you come out empty-handed in this interview? Did you actually get useful information out of this interview?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what useful information you got out of it?
Well, Letecia continued to exhibit no concern for Gannon as she did in the phone calls with Al. Anytime I would try to speak with her about Gannon, an 11-year-old being missing, however I could phrase that, she would turn it back around to herself. Even at the end, she was saying about, instead of him being found, it's her being exonerated and people would be sorry. Everything focused around her. And that's why her referencing her in the third person was not a surprising thing to me. As far as coming out empty-handed, her not being able to articulate a last image of Gannon was very indicative that image was awful. And I told her that multiple times. So to me, I didn't come away with a confession, but I came away with more of a certainty that something really bad had happened to Gannon and that she had witnessed it. As you saw, I probably asked her 30 times, maybe more, about her last image and gave her multiple outs. And the other thing that she kept not wanting to accept is that this was an accident. And normally in a case like this, a person who has last been with a loved one, whether it's accident or something homicidal, they will accept accident, and she would not accept that.
And then what about demonstrating her ability to recall? Were you able to develop that as well?
Her ability to recall
Information?
Yes, anything that was not inculpatory towards the disappearance and homicide, she could recall easily. Dates, times, movements, homework, those sorts of things. It was pretty easy for her to articulate those.
Was it your perception that she was refusing to recall data as to what actually happened to Gannon?
Yes.
Was that helpful towards the investigation?
Yes.
Were you able to develop information about her intellect, her ability to communicate and that sort of thing?
Yes.
And why is that helpful towards the investigation?
That she is a articulate, intelligent, perceptive, and intuitive person. And that also helped her evade law enforcement while we as a team were trying to find out what happened to Gannon while she was even still in Colorado. So just seeing her organized thought patterns there and how adept she was at shifting and deceiving and using some sort of a alternative mechanism, it showed us that she was able to carry out what we thought she was able to carry out, and that is hide Gannon when there were multiple people looking for him.
What about the her lack of any prior mental health concerns? Was that helpful towards the investigation?
Yes.
Why?
Because we saw that she knew what she was doing. And we saw that even in her own words, she made this a 3-day ordeal, saying it started on Saturday, it went through Sunday, and there was all sorts of planning and premeditation involved, whether it's the call in to the school or not using her phone, using Gannon's phone. She explained to us that this was a prolonged event.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Mr. Grusing? Looks like we have one. Just write it down, pass it forward. Just one. Okay, council approach, please. Sorry, Special Agent Donati, if you would raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear affirm the testimony about this man will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Doing fine.
Thank you. Good. Will you please introduce yourself to the jury and then spell your name for the record?
My name is David Donati, spelled D as in David, Onati. I'm a special agent with the FBI.
How long have you been with the FBI?
For 12 years now.
What are your responsibilities with the FBI?
Well, I've worked in a lot of different places. Currently, I work in the Minneapolis division doing criminal investigations. I started off my career in Lander, Wyoming, which is an RA or resident agency on the Wind River Indian Reservation. I spent 3.5 years there, and then I came to Colorado Springs and spent about 5 years here.
What were the years that you were in Colorado Springs?
2015, probably from April 2015 to September of 2020.
All right. What kind of cases have you investigated?
I've done a multitude of things, everything mostly in the violent crime aspect, everything from bank robberies to missing persons, homicide investigations, kidnappings, bank robberies.
Okay. What kind of training do you have that allows you to be an FBI agent?
To be an FBI agent, you attend the New Agent Academy, which is about 20 weeks at Quantico, Virginia. There we learn a series of different things, everything from interviewing to collecting of evidence to all the other duties that a special agent does. I've also attended other training during my service with the FBI, which is helps you to be better at your job and continuing training as collecting evidence and interviewing people.
As it relates to the case that we're here for, how did you become involved in the investigation into Gannon Stauch's disappearance?
Early on in the investigation, we were contacted by the El Paso County Sheriff's Office about a missing juvenile, and they asked our office to assist. And at the time, I was assigned as the case agent to help with that assist.
Did you at some point assist removing some items from a VW Tiguan?
Yes, I believe that was on February 7th of 2020.
So let's talk about the Tiguan, at least as far as you knew it. Did you understand that to be associated with the defendant in the case?
Yes, I understood it to be the vehicle that that she owned and that she drove.
What were you tasked to do as it relates to that particular vehicle?
On that particular vehicle, I was tasked to assist. I had other people that helped me collect the what is called the telematics system from the vehicle. And that's several different components that has the ability to store data of the vehicle while it's being operated.
Specifically, what kind of data were you looking for or hoping to get out of the telematics?
Well, every vehicle is different. Every manufacturer is different. But we do know that these systems do store everything from dates and times to actual GPS coordinates. And some vehicles do also store things like when the vehicle was in motion, when the vehicle was stopped, different systems on the car running, things like that. So, like I said, depending on what that vehicle manufacturer and that data consisted of, it can tell you a lot. And some vehicles, it doesn't tell you much.
What does that process look like removing the telematics from a vehicle?
So the telematics systems can be stored in several different places. There is items that are called the infotainment system, the electronic control modules that store this information. In this particular vehicle, there were 3 different items that we were looking for, and most of those are contained in the dash or under the dash somewhere.
Were you able to find those particular items for this particular vehicle on that February 7th date?
We did. We collected 3 different items from the vehicle, and that involved removing some sections of the dash to get to those.
Do you yourself then analyze those components to get this data that you're looking for or hoping to get?
No, that is then what I do is I collect those components as evidence. I enter them into our computer, and then I put them in FedEx shipping and ship them to Virginia, our headquarters, where the experts can then analyze the data.
Okay. Is that what you did in this case?
I did.
So I want to direct your attention to the photographs that I put on the desk there in front of you. It should be People's Exhibits 281 through 289. Do you see those?
Yes, I do.
Will you please flip through those and then let me know when you're done looking at them?
I'm done.
Do you recognize those photographs?
I do.
What are they of generally?
So the photographs of the Volkswagen Tiguan that I believe to be owned and driven by the defendant. It was located in the El Paso County's vehicle bay where they store their evidence.
And are those photographs fair and accurate representations as to what you saw and in the removal process of this infotainment center?
Absolutely, yes.
Sorry.
I actually took these photographs as we removed them from the vehicle.
All right. Your Honor, at this time, I'd move forward mission and permission to publish 281 through 289.
Defense?
No objection.
281 through 289 will be admitted.
Thank you. We're connected back over here now, Judge. In just a moment, we're going to be projecting 281 up behind you. And just as a housekeeping matter, there should be a pointer there in the witness box and a telescoping pointer of some kind. You can either use that to point at the photograph itself, or you can just describe it by looking at the photo in front of you.
Okay.
Either one that you want to use. So we've got 281 up behind you. So let's look at the left side first. That's what looks like a shipping label. What is that?
That is exactly what you said. It's a FedEx shipping label where I package the items, use the FedEx computer system and entered the information on where I wanted to send it to. And I believe the date on that was February 10th. It's hard to see on the screen, but it's the shipping date.
And it's kind of awkward the way that we've got to do this. So if you stand up and, oops, go back, please. If you stand up and are talking about what's in the photograph, just make sure that our furthest jurors can hear you. The microphone doesn't pick it up very well.
Sorry about that. So this is the shipping label that I used, and I believe the date was February 10th when I shipped it out.
Is it typical to collect items and then ship them out a couple of days later?
It is. One, I have to enter everything into the computer. That document has to be signed by my supervisor before I get the numbers, which are our tracking, our evidence tracking ability. So sometimes that takes a day or 2 days. Then I can package it up and send it out for FedEx.
How is it stored in the meantime?
Our facility is a controlled storage for evidence collection.
Is there any opportunity for the data that's on these devices to be altered or changed while you're waiting that shipment process?
No, there's not.
Okay. And then on the right side of People's Exhibit 281, is that the vehicle?
Yes, this is the 2019 Volkswagen Tiguan that I believe the defendant to be driving.
Was that belief based off of information that you had gathered during the course of this investigation?
It was.
All right, 282? What's in 282?
In this picture, we're more centered on this, the glove compartment area, and this would be the information electronic control module that will be removed. It sits right here. It has kind of a plastic cover, but once we remove it, I think there's another photograph of that.
When you're going through this process, are you basically just gaining access to the thing and then unplugging it and pulling it out?
Yeah, there's basically that's it. In some situations, like around a display module, there's molding that comes on everybody's dash that is popped out or removed. That's usually in by clips. Every once in a while, there's a screw or something like that needs to be removed.
And then just so that we're understanding what's happening in this photograph, why does it appear that there's white powder on everything in there?
This vehicle had gone through a previous evidence collection, and I forget what the name of that is, but that's like a luminol.
Blue Star?
Is Blue Star.
Okay.
That's used to under lights to detect evidence of other types of evidence like blood or other things like that.
So is that basically just the residue of the Blue Star, what it looks like once it dries?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
283?
And this box here, the front is what you saw in the other picture would be on this side of this silver box. And then all the cables come like very similar to a computer component. They can be unplugged and pulled out.
Did you in fact unplug this unit and pull it out? And that's one of the things that was shipped off to Quantico, Virginia?
Yes.
All right. 284?
And this is the item sitting on the bench top just to get a better focused picture of it.
Same item that was in.
Same item that we've just talked about.
Okay, perfect. 285?
This is the infotainment display. This is usually on vehicles where your radio is seen, or if you have a backup camera, things like that. So this piece that is removed here was the venting above it, and the piece that we are collecting as evidence is this display system. You see a knob right here.
Okay. 286?
This is the back of that unit. The face would be facing the gear shift right there.
So is that on the face that's sort of facing down towards the gear shifter? Is that basically that touch screen that's in a lot of modern cars?
Exactly. It's a touch screen that, like I said, usually allows you to change the radio or do the air conditioning, a lot of other features. Some of them have mapping systems, things like that.
287?
This is a little bit harder to see, but this would be the emergency call module. It is located inside the dash, behind the steering wheel.
Okay.
You'll see a better picture when we actually get it out.
288?
And this is that same item, the emergency call module.
So that comes out of the left side of the dashboard, left of the steering wheel?
It comes out of I couldn't tell you exactly which side of the steering wheel from memory, but yes, it's the left side. It's the driver's side of the vehicle, kind of back behind the steering wheel. So you had to remove some components of the dash to get to it.
And then that should be 288. That's up there now. So let's look at 289.
And this is that same item on the table where you can see it a little bit better.
Okay, you can go ahead and sit back down. So tell the jury, you mentioned that this will go into a temporary storage at your facility and then you will package it up to ship it. How do you ensure that what you're shipping and what is received is the same thing?
Good question. We have several ways of doing that. We have an evidence tracking form that goes with it that talks about who handled that product, but the items itself actually get packaged inside a box. It gets the red evidence tape over the top so that during shipping, if there's anybody that would tamper with it, that tape would be ripped, the box would be open. So we can say that if it gets there and that tape is secure, that the item was not tampered with during shipment.
Once an item gets analyzed, do you know what happens with the data that may or may not come off of these units when you ship them off to Quantico?
Whenever that evidence is finalized and they get some information off, they would then send it back to us in a similar manner. It would be packaged with red evidence tape and put in FedEx and sent back to us.
If there is location data that's included in the data that's pulled off of that, is that made available to other members of the FBI to potentially map that information?
Yes. So when they pull that information off, they can send it to us. That helps us because we're in the middle of an investigation. And as soon as we can get that information, it definitely helps us quicker. A lot of times we get information sent via email or something like that. It would show us data points or GPS coordinates that we could plot on a map on a computer system and overlay it with like something that you'd be familiar with is like Google Maps with different points plotted on it.
Did that happen in this case where information came back from Quantico with location data for this particular vehicle?
It did. It came back relatively quickly, but that information is kind of raw data, and they tell us that it's not has not been certified or verified yet. So they tell us to look at it and use other means to try to corroborate that information. But I did get the data points early on in the investigation.
Did you give that information then to Special Agent Kevin Hoyland to go through that mapping process that you just described?
Yes, I did.
And do you know whether that was successfully done or not?
Yes, it was successfully done.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have just a moment?
That's
all I have.
No
Cross-examination?
No questions, Your Honor.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Special Agent Donati? No? All right. Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you.
Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
We'll call Special Agent Dwight Falkowski. I'm going to place this on the witness stand. Go ahead and pull those photos out.
Okay.
And before Mr. Falkowski takes a stand, would it be possible for defense tonight to approach just briefly?
Oh, sure.
So we can find out stuff that the car has contained, such as location data or phones or devices that have been connected to the car and the data associated with those things.
All right. So what kind of training allows you to do that job?
I'm an electrical engineer by a bachelor's of science from Virginia Tech. I have other items on my CV that I could put out for you for FBI training if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah. So let's start with that, the FBI training.
Okay, let me pull up my CV.
Okay.
Okay, with the FBI, I've taken DEMS training, that's Digital Evidence Management Systems, digital evidence handling, legal ethics training, CDART mentorship and proficiency testing. That is a specialized internal thing. A little explanation there is previously I worked for the FBI as a contractor. that allowed contractors to handle evidence in their facility. And also, I have testified as an expert witness now twice.
Okay. How long have you, you said, I think, an electrical engineer? How long have you been an electrical engineer?
My degree was from Virginia Tech in 1992.
Okay. What's your investigative experience? How many different investigations have you been involved with?
More than I can contend with at the moment. I have an estimate on my CV. Like, one moment.
Sure.
Let's see. I've listed over 70 devices that I've examined since 2018.
Okay. What kind of devices have you examined? And I'm not asking you to give us an exhaustive list, but just a generalized idea of what kind of devices that you've worked on in your role as an FBI agent.
Okay, I'll give you the primary two pieces that I typically see from vehicles. And one is the infotainment system, which is the center portion of your car that provides you with information about, like, if you're navigating or what music you're playing, that hardware. Also, another piece of hardware that we pull from the cars is a telematics device. This is a piece that typically talks back to the corporation that's providing connected services.
Okay. And you mentioned that you've testified as an expert witness. What jurisdictions were those expert witness testimonies provided in?
Both were in South Carolina.
Okay. Was that with the Alex Murdaugh case?
Yes, one with the Murdaugh case.
Okay. What was your assignment back in 2020? Same assignment as what you're testifying to today?
Clarify, please.
What was your assignment with the FBI in 2020?
In 2020.
Yes.
So 2020, I was doing the same work as a contractor with the FBI.
Okay. Did you have an occasion to work on some devices as it relates to the Gannon Stauch investigation?
Yes.
Before I do that, Your Honor, at this time, I'd move to qualify this witness as an expert witness in automotive forensic specialists.
Defense?
I don't have an objection. That's fine.
All right, the witness will be so qualified. Go ahead.
So as it relates to the devices that you examined in this case, what devices did you look at?
There were 4 pieces that I examined, and I have, I don't have the list of them in front of me, but there were 4 pieces from the vehicle. I knew that some pieces that we had worked on were not valuable in extracting data from, but there were one in particular, the infotainment system from that car was probably the primary one we looked at.
Okay. When you say 4 pieces, does that mean that one of the modules had an SD card in it or something like that expanded it out to 4?
No.
Okay.
The 4 physical pieces, and it should be listed in the hardware list or on the in the evidence that I provided, the digital evidence, derivative evidence. There are 4 listings there, and it shows explicitly on each piece what was provided, and it includes pictures.
Okay. And then as it relates to your work, did you have 2 different efforts towards gathering this information? One that was an initial uncertified basically result, and then a second that was more in-depth?
Yes. So I'll go ahead and explain the situation around that, if that's okay.
Yes.
So it came to us initially as an active search for a missing child, and in which case we prioritized something like that and put it, we're working on that now. And so when we initially got the pieces in, it was from a vehicle that we had not previously looked at, so we had no idea of what it might contain or the data in it. So we provided a very fast analysis on the system at that point and was able to extract location data out of that vehicle. But then part of our standard process is when we develop tools to get data off of vehicles, we have to validate them later, which requires a much more exhaustive effort to show that the data that we're putting on a system is exactly what we're getting off. So when I say this data point represents the vehicle in this location, that is accurate. So it took us an additional approximate year or so to finish that validation process.
Okay. So when you have that initial effort that you get that unvalidated data, what did you do with it, that unvalidated data?
We provided it as preliminary data back to the field.
Okay. And then that secondary effort that you mentioned was roughly a year down the road from that first effort. Was that data, did that basically validate all the data, including the data that you had sent the first time?
That's correct. And there were also, I believe there was a little bit of additional data provided as we found more data on the system over time.
Okay. Was there any discrepancy in the data? And what I mean by that is that the initial data that you provided early on, was any of that data that you provided to the investigation proven wrong based on the secondary release of data?
No, that data proved accurate.
Okay. So when we're talking about the item that was given fruitful information towards this investigation, what was that particular device?
The head unit, there was 4 devices. I believe it's the item that ends with 04. Is that?
Well,
what you're-
you're the expert. I can't.
Okay.
I don't know where it came from. All I know is it magically appears.
All right, give me a moment. Let me pull out some
Okay.
records and so I can find what we're looking for. Okay, I do have the list here.
Okay.
So you want me to go through all 4 pieces or just this one?
Well, so let me ask you just a clarifying question before we go
Okay.
down that path. Did you look at all of the items that you received from Colorado Springs to see if there was going to be any useful information on all of them?
Yes, we evaluated each piece.
And then through that evaluation, did you determine, based on what you've already said, that only one was going to provide any useful location data?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's talk about that one then.
Okay.
What particular item are we talking about that provided useful location data for this investigation?
Okay, it was the information ECM, that's electronic control module, basically the head unit that I explained before, from a 2019 Volkswagen Tiguan,
Who did you receive these items from?
from our internal evidence control facility.
Okay, but when you get it from your internal evidence control facility, can you tell like what case it's being sent from?
The case number is with it, yes.
Okay, and can you verify that it belongs to a Volkswagen Tiguan that was seized in Colorado Springs as opposed to, let's say, Seattle, Washington?
Yes, we have a chain of evidence maintained in the digital evidence management system.
And the information that we're talking about here, was that in relation to this specific case that we're having you testify on?
Sorry, say it one more time.
The evidence that we're talking about here, the
Yes.
location data that you were able to pull, can you verify that that information relates to our case that you're testifying in today?
Yes.
Okay. So tell the jury, how do you get the information off of this electronic control module head unit?
You want to go into specifics?
Yeah. Tell the
Okay.
jury how that works.
I'm going to pull out my notes from that. Okay, when I'm processing the evidence, this is what we did to this particular piece of evidence. We first labeled the evidence with the evidence item number and took photographs of it in its state as received. Then we disassembled the specimen, removed the circuit boards, and removed some of the memory flash chips from the circuit board that was inside. And from the flash chips, then we were able to read those flash chips using a tool so that we would have what was a binary image provided that represents the data that was inside those flash chips. Now that data is in a digital format readable by computers and not necessarily understandable by humans. And so this is where our processes continue.
So let me break in there just so that we're understanding.
Okay.
When you say that you pull a chip off and then you read it, do you mean that you're physically looking at it and reading information off of it?
We have specialized tools that access the chip and can read the chip in its proper protocols to be able to pull the data off correctly.
And were you able to successfully do that in this particular case?
Yes, for 2 chips.
For 2 chips off of this electronic control module circuit board?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you then look at the data before you send it back to the investigative arm or area?
Yes. So this case, at this point in the stage, you've only got a binary image with no understanding of what the data means.
Okay.
And so there was processing performed at this point.
So tell us about the processing.
Okay. So part of this is we were able to extract logical file systems from the image. And from the logical file systems, we combed the files that we found for information that might be related to location of the vehicle, because that was stated as an item of interest. And from that, we found, one moment. We quickly found that there was some location data available in some computer logs that were on there in a textual format that were very easy to access, which allowed us to quickly, within 1 day, write a parsing tool that would go out and pull that data from those logs. And that data was represented with coordinates and timestamps.
And when you say coordinates, do you mean like GPS coordinates?
Yeah, geocoordinates.
Geo coordinates?
Yeah.
When you get those geo coordinates out of that log that you're describing, what do you do with it?
So we prepare it into a format that is usable for us humans. I can give you a coordinate, but then you'll even have to go and type those coordinates into a thing like Google Earth to be able to see them. So we take that and provide, the parser takes the information and puts it into a file that you can just throw into Google Earth. It's called a KML file. And that file will automatically populate the locations and times of the vehicle on a map.
Okay. So how do you get that information back to the originating investigative region?
So in this case, we also provided because of the nature of the search, we went ahead and looked at some of the data and provided a PDF as well, along with the KML file to say, here's some points of interest you may want to go look at. And that was, I'm just seeing which method was provided back. It was provided back to the field. I believe that was over electronic communication.
Okay. Do you know who you provided it to?
So I wrote down here the case agent, which I guess at the time that might have been Donati.
Okay. So Special Agent David Donati?
Yes.
Okay. What day did you provide that to him? Do you have that information?
I have the date that I had the review. February 12th, 2020.
Okay. And then is it common for field agents to then potentially give that information to other potential experts, FBI or not FBI, to then do some sort of mapping with this data that you're providing?
Absolutely. It's their call what they do with the data.
Okay. The should be up there on the desk with you. I put the exhibit envelope. Should be People's Exhibit 291. Do you see that?
This thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you see that? Do you recognize it?
Is there something inside I need to look at?
Well, do you recognize it or not?
I do not.
Okay. Do you remember, did you put the information on some sort of a card, SD card or something like that?
I put on an SD card, yes.
Okay. The information that was contained in that SD card, was that provided back to the field to Special Agent David Donati?
That was provided, yes, at a later time.
Okay. How was that provided to him?
Okay, so that, as I was speaking earlier, we had about a year's time pass where we provided the validation of the data. So when our evaluation of the whole process was complete to our satisfaction, then we provided this evidence in totality and in confidence back to the field through the SD card.
Okay. And so what we have in People's Exhibit 291, is that the information that you provided back to the field based on your extraction of the data from those modules?
I see it says SD card, but I don't see the SD card here. So,
Okay. So do you remember prior to you getting on the stand, me asking if you'd had a chance to look at this item or?
I looked at the SD card and I initialed the SD card. Is that not available?
Okay. So that should be in that envelope.
In the envelope. Okay, I just wanted to check.
There should be some scissors there to your left.
Okay, I will open the envelope.
Yep.
There we go.
Is that what you looked at?
That is what I looked at. This is the evidence we provided.
All right.
I did not recognize the package it was in.
Okay. So is that the same SD card that was provided in this investigation that contained that location data that you sent back to the field investigator, Special Agent David Donati?
Yes.
Is it fair and accurate representation of that data that you recovered from that electronic control module back on February 12th of 2020?
Yes, I verified it just shortly before
Okay.
this meeting.
Your Honor, at this time, I move forward admission of People's Exhibit 291.
Defense
Can I ask just what a couple questions?
on authenticity? Yes,
The
go ahead.
exhibit.
Go ahead.
Yes. Special Agent, hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Just quickly, this SD card information you have, is this the verified stuff that came approximately a year after February 2020?
That's correct.
Okay, this isn't the initial.
This is not the preliminary data.
Okay.
It does include the preliminary data that we provided at that time as well.
Okay. And how is the preliminary data different from the final data that you got at a year later?
So the preliminary data was what we initially found during a compressed timeline to try to locate a missing child, and later on proved to be accurate in its totality. There were some potential additions to the data as we continued to process it over that year.
Okay. Were there any discrepancies or inconsistencies between the preliminary data and the final data that was published or released a year later?
No.
Okay. Your Honor, I don't have an objection.
All right. Exhibit 291 will be admitted. Mr. Allen, go ahead.
And that was the some of my questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cook.
No, Your Honor.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Agent Falkowski? No? All right. Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you.
Before you get down, we just put that SD card back in that.
It is in the envelope. It is not sealed. Here's.
Council, approach for a moment. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, trials are sort of
Good afternoon, Ms. Holes. How are you doing?
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first and last name?
Yes, my name is Sherry Holes. It's Sherrie, last of Holes, Holes.
And what is your occupation?
I'm currently employed as a forensic serologist and DNA analyst at the Colorado Springs Metro Crime Lab.
And how long have you been employed such as?
I've been employed in that role approximately 4.5 years at the CSPD Crime Lab.
And what does a forensic serologist
Stop you for
do?
just a moment.
Oh, sure.
Can you move that so that it's on its side so it doesn't block the view of those two jurors right there?
Let me just put it right here.
Or you can just lay it down on its side. Okay.
We'll just do that.
All right. Go ahead.
I think I was asking you what a forensic serologist does.
Yes, a forensic serologist examines evidence for the presence of biological fluids. Specifically in our lab, we look for blood, semen, saliva, and also we examine for other potential biological evidence that may be suitable for DNA analysis.
And what kind of experience of training do you have in the field of forensic serology?
Well, my training, first of all, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Biological Sciences from University of California at Davis. I also have a Master's of Public Health with a specialty in Forensic Science from University of California, Berkeley. Prior to my employment in Colorado, I was employed in the same capacity for approximately 10 years. I was also a forensic DNA analyst and serologist in various crime labs in California. Most serology training actually does occur on the job. There are a few formal classes that I did take, such as microscopy of semen evidence, and mostly it was on-the-job training. In fact, when I came to Colorado Springs and was hired here, I spent about a year just going through a training protocol before I was deemed competent and able to begin casework.
And are you peer reviewed when you do a serology examination?
Yeah, so all the reports that I write with my results are always technically reviewed by a second qualified analyst within the lab to make sure that they agree with the conclusions that I'm offering in the report. And then there's also another level of review called administrative review before the report goes out by another second qualified analyst, serology and DNA analyst.
And approximately how many forensic serology examinations have you conducted in your career?
Oh, in my career, it's well over 1,000.
You don't keep track each time you do one and say,
I usually average about 100 cases for serology a year. So over the course of almost 15 years, yeah, it's well over 1,000.
that was a bad attempt. I'm sorry. Have you testified as an expert in the field of forensic serology in the past?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
I've been qualified as an expert in this area approximately 40 times previously.
And are those both here and in California?
That's correct.
At this time, we'd ask that the court qualify Ms. Holes as an expert in the field of forensic serology and allow her to render opinions in that field.
Defense?
No objection to her being qualified.
Witness will be so qualified. Go ahead.
So I want to kind of focus on your role as a forensic serologist here in Colorado Springs, the Metro Crime Lab. Were you asked to conduct several forensic serological examinations?
Serological, correct, yeah.
In this particular case, the disappearance of Gannon Stauch.
Yes, I was.
Could you give the jury a rundown on how you come about or how you became involved in this investigation?
So when we get a request from an agency, in this case, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, typically there's a couple of things that happen. One is they will write a cover letter with a description of the pertinent case details and some of the items of evidence that they would like examined. And then also typically there's a meeting between the submitting agency and our crime lab supervisor, our DNA technical supervisor, and they make decisions as to these are the items that we will accept and which what are the priorities on which items will be tested.
And so is that common in any criminal investigation that the investigating agency will submit a letter asking you to perform analysis on certain items of evidence?
I can't speak to how other laboratories and agencies do it, but that is what we request, just so that we have some background knowledge of, it helps us decide of the case, so that helps us decide which evidence are best going to answer the questions being posed in the case and what is most probative, in other words, offering proof in the case circumstances.
And is it often in large investigations that you may actually meet with the detectives or other investigative officers to talk about what should be tested and why and that kind of thing?
Yes, definitely. They try to do meetings before the first request comes in, but often in a large investigation, there can be several meetings that occur over time as more investigative details come to light or more questions are being answered in the case. And that is what happened in this particular case.
Can you describe that for the jury? Why did that happen in this particular case?
I was not involved in the actual meetings that were occurring. That was our crime lab manager and the DNA supervisor. But from my understanding, as more information was coming to light in the course of the investigation, more questions were being asked, more evidence was being collected on multiple different occasions, which then was coming into the lab with a request for examination.
And when you conduct your examinations, how do you get your results back to the investigating agency?
So once we have, and when I have issued a report and it's gone through the 2 layers of review, it is then released to the investigating detective, the lead detective on the case from one of our administrative staff.
And did you do several reports with regards to this investigation?
Yes, in this particular investigation, I released 7 reports.
And do you know why there were 7 different reports on, I'm assuming, 7 different dates?
Again, I think additional items were being collected, additional questions were being asked as additional evidence was being collected and during the course of the investigation. So they didn't have all of the evidence or even all of the information from that very first request. So again, as they were having more meetings with our lab management, it was decisions were being made that we need additional items tested.
And so what would be your role, just so you can explain to the jury, in the process of doing your analysis with regards to evidence in this particular case?
My role was to examine the items of evidence for the presence of, mostly for the presence of blood, and then also for other potential biological material that may be there, and consolidate any swabs or cuttings that I take, as well as documentation of the evidence. Documentation is done through photography and from note-taking of my observations of the evidence. And then any samples that I deem would be suitable to go on for DNA analysis, I'm then consolidating into what we call a DNA packet. DNA packet is just an envelope that has numerous tubes that I've prepared. The tubes have little pieces of cuttings or little swabs from the various items of evidence. Then that will go forward to the next step, which is the DNA analysis.
And with regards to this particular investigation, you indicated earlier that you may have been looking for blood or the presumptive presence of blood in these types of items. How would that impact your DNA packet, or whether or not you created a DNA packet with regards to what the results of your blood test was?
So when I am looking for blood, that's always starts with a visual exam. If I see staining that is consistent with visually looks like blood, we then do a chemical color test. It's a presumptive test for blood, meaning it's not a confirmatory test for blood, but it does indicate the presence of that. If I have a stain area that looks like blood, reacts to that chemical presumptive test, I typically will take a small cutting or a swabbing of that stain, trying to preserve additional stain, not take the whole sample when I can. And then that would go into a test tube. That test tube then goes into the DNA packet. I also do what we call trace swabbing, and trace swabbing is areas that may contain DNA cells or cells that have DNA. So many of our tests are so sensitive now in DNA analysis that we don't actually need to have a stain present. We can also get a DNA profile from just a very small number of just cells. Cells can be deposited just through touch or from wearing clothing, that kind of thing. So some of my serology examination is also doing trace swabbing. So areas in which I don't actually see a stain, but may be interested in DNA results from maybe through someone having touched an item per se.
Okay. And we'll get to those as we go through the individual items. Did you have several individual physical pieces of evidence that you examined and performed a serological examination on those items?
Yes, I did.
And would you also receive swabs from various areas of a residence 6627 Mandan Drive here in Colorado Springs?
Yes, I did.
And when you received all these items, were they all sealed in protective ways so that no one touched them in between the last person who opened the item?
Yes.
And rather than go through that with each item we go through, every item you looked at was sealed when you got it?
Yeah, if anything is not in a sealed condition, I note it, but I do not remember receiving any items in an unsealed manner, no.
And when you create a DNA packet, do you also seal that item and preserve it in a way so that the DNA will not be impacted?
Yes, I do. My envelope that I create that has all the little tubes from the cuttings and swabs, that gets an evidence tape seal once it's ready to go forward, and it's stored frozen for further analysis.
And is that why we don't admit them here in court, because they need to stay in the freezer, that kind of thing, to preserve that DNA?
Yeah, they are best maintained in a frozen manner, and literally it's just an envelope with the tubes inside. So it's best just not to bring it to court at all.
So to your right are a series of exhibits. And I'd like to go through these one by one, as painfully as that sounds, but I think we can go through it fairly quickly. The first exhibit that you'll see in that box on that table is Exhibit 182. Could you pull that out and tell us what that is?
Yes. This is labeled as the toothbrush belonging to Gannon Stauch.
And do you need to open that to see that that's the toothbrush in there?
I can see it from the bottom. It's been partially opened.
Okay. And when you received that, was it sealed, of course?
Yes, it was.
What did you do with that particular toothbrush?
This toothbrush was submitted as a possible secondary reference standard. When we need to make DNA comparisons, we need a reference standard or a known sample from an individual. This was submitted as a possible secondary reference. Gannon was not present at the time, so they have a toothbrush, which hopefully would have his DNA on it. So I did some swabbing of the toothbrush. I also took some cuttings of the toothbrush bristles as well.
And was that done on February 8th of 2020?
The report was issued on February 8th, that work, yes.
It says that the request date was February 5th, 2020. So did you do the actual testing sometime in between those two dates?
Yes,
So Gannon's body had not been discovered yet.
correct.
So you created a DNA packet for this item?
Not just for this item, but yes, this would be one of the items, those little cuttings of the toothbrush bristles and the swabs, those would go into test tubes and be included in the DNA packet with other samples that I collected.
Now, earlier you testified that you're also a forensic DNA analyst. Is there a reason why you didn't do DNA on this particular item versus creating a packet and sending it on?
Yeah, at this point in time, I was not a qualified DNA analyst at the lab here in Colorado Springs. So my only role was to do serology examinations.
So now you can do both, right?
I'm to a certain point in my DNA analysis training that I am qualified to up to a certain step, but there's always more training to be done.
Did this item and other items go on to Donna Minogue for further DNA testing?
Yes.
And I don't know if we want to just stick that back in
Oh,
the
sure.
box, just that so it doesn't get flooded up there. Or that works too. Okay. The next item in there is People's Exhibit 184. You could pull that out and tell us what that is.
Yes, DNA standards for Gannon's biological father.
And do you need to open that to see what's in there?
It's partially open. There's, yeah, I can take a look at this. Okay, there's just some swabs that are in here.
Are those buccal swabs from Mr. Eugene Stauch, also Al Stauch?
Yes, buccal swabs are swabs that are taken from the inside of the cheeks and the gum area, and those are taken as a reference standard or a known DNA standard that will be later on used for comparison purposes.
And I guess while we're doing that, let's pull out 185 as well. What is People's Exhibit 185?
DNA standards for Gannon's biological mother, Landon. Okay. Yes, this also contains 2 sets of swabs.
And so are those buccal swabs as well from Gannon's mother?
Yes, these are buccal swabs also collected as reference standards from Gannon's mother.
Now, we're doing this together, but I'm assuming when you conduct the test, you're doing things individually, right? You're not mixing and matching items of evidence?
So we have yes, that's correct. We have a very set process on how we examine items of evidence in the lab. We always, before we even start any examination, we do a thorough cleaning of our workspace using bleach. We know that DNA, because it's so sensitive, our testing procedures are so sensitive, they are prone to contamination. So we have to be very careful, make sure we don't leave our own DNA on any evidence. So that involves wearing protective face coverings and hand coverings and gloves, hair coverings as well. And then we also want to make sure that there's no contaminating DNA on our work surfaces. So those are always bleached down in between every single item of evidence. We always lay out a fresh piece of like white butcher paper. So the evidence actually doesn't even touch any of our work surfaces. Any of our implements are cleaned as well. And then we always look at the order in which we look at items of evidence is also important. We try to look at evidence items that may have potentially low amounts of DNA before we would look at evidence items that have high amounts of DNA, something that would be very bloody, would have an expected high amount of DNA. We wouldn't want that to contaminate our work surfaces at all. So the order in which we examine is important. And then lastly, we always look at reference samples last after looking at all the other evidence items.
And with regards to People's Exhibit 184 and 185, what did you do exactly to create a DNA packet for those 2 buccal swabs?
So the buccal swabs individually, of course, one by one, examining those. My role was just to take a portion of one of the buccal swabs. I essentially it's like a long Q-tip, like a Q-tip head with a long stick. That's what the swab is. And I just take a sterile scalpel and I just portion off one part of the swab. That goes into a sterile tube, which is then labeled with the associated barcode number that we've given it. Then that tube that I've created goes into the DNA packet.
And I'm referencing your February 8th, 2020 report, if you need to refresh your recollection. But do you recall looking at a piece of tan carpet that was rolled up inside of another piece of carpet that was found in the storage room at 6627 Mandan Drive?
Yes.
And what were you looking at in regards to that carpet?
So I was looking for the possible presence of blood.
Did you see with your eye the presence of possible blood?
I did.
And what did you do upon seeing that?
So once I visually see staining that looks like it may be blood, I then do the chemical color presumptive test, which was positive for the presence of blood on the carpet. And then I do, actually on the back of that rolled up piece of carpet, I then swabbed a portion of that potential blood staining so that portion of that swab can go in the test tube and then into the DNA packet for further analysis.
And do you have People's Exhibit 386 there
I do.
next in the list?
Yes.
What is People's Exhibit 386?
Let's see. This is 3 sets of possible blood swabs.
And what are those blood swabs from? Does it indicate on the
It
envelope?
does, yes. These were identified using placards A, B, and C, collected from the stairs and the floor of the garage.
And so, what are these? Are these Q-tips, or am I being too general here?
It's very much like a Q-tip. Their swabs come in sterile packaging. So typically there's a sterile wrapper, and within there are 2 swabs that they are, when our crimes investigators are collecting these, they would open up the sterile packaging, take out these 2 swabs, which look like a Q-tip, but they have long wooden sticks. And then once they're finished swabbing these particular areas, they go back into the individual swab wrappers, and that's how I receive them. This one has 3 sets, meaning there'd be 3 separate collections then contained within this outer envelope.
Are the 3 sets labeled in a particular way?
I'm gonna need to refer to my notes. Let's see.
Now, page 2 of 4 of your
Oh, thank you.
report.
Is that on my report or my notes?
It's in your report.
Okay, I'm just gonna look at my notes. Okay, let's see. Okay, so they actually, inside the outer envelope, inside there was 3 smaller tape sealed manila envelopes. And each of those were labeled with either an A or a B or a C to indicate the placards that they had used during while they were collecting the evidence.
And does it say where these placards were located within the residence?
Let's see.
Was it in the garage?
Yeah, so the outermost barcode label, which they put on here, says from the stairs and the floor of the garage.
So with regards to these placards, if the jury wanted to, they can look at photographs and go to the garage and look for placards A, B, and C, and that would reference the swabs that we're talking about?
Yes, correct.
So what did you find with regards to placards A, B, and C, or at least the swabs from those areas in the garage?
So each of those swabs did show kind of a reddish discoloration, each set, A, B, and C. And I did my chemical presumptive testing for each set of placards A, B, C, and all were presumptive positive for blood.
And did those get forwarded on for DNA analysis?
Yes, portions of those swabs were then cut and placed into test tubes, forwarded for DNA analysis.
Okay. I believe the next one, Your Honor, if I may have permission to look for an exhibit.
Might have to narrow it down a little bit more than that. That's okay.
Well, People's 451 is what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Let me show you people's, that's in admitted evidence 451. Do you recognize this item?
I do.
Do you need to look at that further?
Okay, I do, yes.
Okay. Obviously, 451 is a piece of carpet, right?
Yes, that was a carpet, correct. Carpet 1 is how they designated that one.
So now while I'm up here, what did you find in People's Exhibit 451?
That piece of carpet, there was staining observed on both sides of the carpet that was presumptive positive for blood.
And did you forward that on for DNA analysis?
I did, yes. Well, not the whole carpet. I did take samples from the carpet.
Now, People's Exhibit 503, in your report, it's labeled as 6839 SW2-01, another piece of carpet. Do you recall seeing that?
So let's see. Carpet 1 is that item number that you just described. There was a second carpet 2, that was 6839 SW2-04.01. Is it a different exhibit that you're referencing?
Yeah, I think 451 was a different one. So let me show you that again so you can look at the lab number.
Okay. So okay, so that's the -01. That's for carpet 1,
Okay.
right? Okay.
Is the next one carpet 2 then?
The next one should be carpet 2.
So same thing with carpet 2. What did you find on carpet 2, which is People's Exhibit 503?
Yes, carpet 2 also had visible staining and also reacted positive to the presumptive test for blood.
And did you also look at the foam padding associated with People's Exhibit 503?
Yes, I did.
And what did you find in the foam padding of People's Exhibit 503?
Also, foam padding had visible staining and was positive for the presumptive presence of blood.
The next exhibit in the box to your right should be People's Exhibit 512. Can you pull that out?
Yes.
What do you see in People's Exhibit 512?
This one is labeled as the electrical outlet cover with possible blood. And it says collected from southeast corner of southeast room, child room of basement.
And what did you find after, did you conduct a presumptive test for blood on that item?
I did. I noted some visible staining on the electric outlet cover. I did the presumptive test for blood, which was positive.
And did you perform a DNA kit for that item?
Well, I did do some swabbing of the stained area that could then go on for DNA analysis, yes.
And so do you do that, for instance, if it's a physical piece of item that may have blood on it, would you actually swab the blood versus a CSI at the scene swabbing like the garage floor that we already talked about?
Yeah, typically when we train CSIs or law enforcement officers, we always suggest that if they can collect the item and bring it into the lab so the serologist can examine it, that's the best practice. If it's an item that is just not movable, such as a garage floor or just too unwieldy to collect, then they do some sampling as well. But we always prefer on anything that can be packaged and brought into the lab, we always would prefer to examine it ourselves and do all of the documentation and collection in the lab.
Is the swabbing the same process though? Same, keep referring to it as a Q-tip. Is there something else I should refer it to?
Yeah, swab or Q-tip. It's the same. We always have these. So we use the sterile package swabs that we open up, and then I label the swab wrapper as to what I'm going to be, what the barcode number is associated with it, and I swab it. I let it dry. Once it's dry, I can then take a portion of the swab, put it into a sterile test tube for DNA analysis.
We can put that back, and then the next item should be People's Exhibit 516. That?
Yes.
And what is People's Exhibit 516?
This is labeled as possible blood swabs collected from electrical socket in southeast corner of southeast room, child room of basement.
And do you know if that socket is related to People's Exhibit 512, the item we just looked at?
Yes, I believe that they did actually. I'm not sure who actually collected the swab, but that it was swabbed prior to being collected and submitted to the lab.
And what did you do with that particular exhibit?
This particular exhibit, I just noted some coloration on the swab, and then let's see, tested it with the presumptive test for blood, which was positive. I then took a portion of the swab, cut portion of the swab, put it into the test tube for DNA analysis.
The next time I want to talk to you about is in your report. It's People's Exhibit 504, but in your report you label as carpet 2. Does that refresh your recollection a little bit about the 3 different carpets you looked at?
Okay, yes. So there was a carpet 1, there was a carpet 2, and then there was an unlabeled carpet rug. So,
Right,
okay,
right.
yes.
So what did you find with regards to People's Exhibit 504, what you have labeled as carpet 2 in your report?
Again, visible staining was present on the carpet. The chemical presumptive test for blood was positive.
And did you forward that on for DNA analysis?
Yes, samples were taken on carpet 2 from the back side of the carpet. Swabs were taken, cuttings were taken, and even some of the stained fibers were taken, all to be forwarded for DNA analysis.
Did you do the same for the padding that was related to carpet 2, People's Exhibit 504?
Same process, did a visual exam, noted staining, which was presumptive positive for blood, and again, took a small cutting of the stained area that could be forwarded for DNA analysis.
And with regards to carpet 1 and carpet 2, do you know where this carpet came from with regards to 6627 Mandan Drive?
They were labeled as coming from the southeast room, also known as the child's room in the basement.
that been Gannon's room, or did you know?
That's my understanding that they were from Gannon's room.
Was it your understanding that there was a large area of blood in the corner of his room underneath his bed?
Yes.
I now want to turn to your February 28th, 2020 report. And I believe the next item in the box will be People's Exhibit 371. Is that right?
That's 378.
Do you see 371 up there? Oh, I apologize. 371 is defendant's buccal swabs. Do you recall getting defendant's buccal swabs?
Let's see. Were they part of a kit? Let me take a
No,
look.
they're currently admitted into evidence, but they're in a freezer somewhere.
So I did actually get buccal swabs. They were part of an evidence collection kit taken from Letecia Stauch, which had fingernail scrapings and a buccal swab. So I did portion out some of the buccal swab from Letecia Stauch for DNA analysis.
Okay, and that went on to Donna Minogue's analysis?
Correct, yes.
All right. So now let's go to the shoes that you have there. People's Exhibit 378. Are those the shoes you looked at?
Yes, they are.
Is that People's Exhibit 378?
Correct, yes.
Now, earlier you testified about swabbing for DNA for the presence of things that are other than blood. Did you do that with this particular item?
Yes, I did. Again, we call that trace DNA swabbing. It's in areas that we don't see staining, but we may be interested in any, say, skin cells that may be left by, in these cases, shoes, maybe someone who wore the shoes. We could potentially still get DNA from swabbing, in this case, the inside soles of the shoes.
And so can you demonstrate, I know the shoes are in plastic, but can you kind of demonstrate for the jury where you swab these particular shoes in the hopes of finding DNA for the owner of those shoes?
Sure. So for the owner, I would expect that their DNA would be on the inside soles. So I actually, for each shoe individually, these are separate swabbings. I took the swabs together and I swabbed the insole, like reaching into the shoe, and then also the back heel area. And that was done separately for the right and left shoes.
And did that get forwarded on for DNA analysis?
Yes, it did.
Did you also swab any potential blood on the outside of those shoes?
Yes. On the right shoe, I did swab. It did react. The right shoe did react to the chemical presumptive test for blood on the outsole. It's on the bottom of the shoe. So I actually just swabbed the entire outsole, including all of the recessed areas of the shoe as well.
Now, when you got these shoes, were you able to visibly see blood on them or what appeared to be blood?
So I did note that they had kind of an orangish, reddish coloration. I didn't, sometimes things can look like blood and they don't react, and other times, the blood potentially can take different colorations. Both shoes had that coloration, although the left shoe did not react to the presumptive presence of blood. So unclear if the coloration is due to potential blood staining, but the right shoe did react to the presumptive test for blood.
And what happens to blood if you put shoes in a washing machine and run the wash?
So what happens to blood? So blood obviously is going to, for the most part, be washed off, but within blood, there are cells, and cells can sometimes survive washing. We do know through actual studies that have been published that some DNA can survive washing. Of course, some would be lost to the wash process, but depending on various factors such as what type of substrate or surface the DNA was deposited on, what type of wash cycle, what type of detergents, or even if bleaches were used, those are all going to impact whether or not we would get recoverable amounts of DNA from something that has gone through the wash.
When you received these shoes, did you notice anything that was consistent with them being run through a washing machine?
I actually did note for these shoes that they had a strong, what I call clean odor.
And yet you still saw some discoloration that appeared to be blood to you on these shoes?
I did note discoloration on the soles of the shoe, the outsoles, and that's where I focused my attention as far as presumptive testing for blood, and was able to find positive results on the outsole of the right shoe.
Did you also receive a swab with regards to this case, which is People's Exhibit 246? Should be in that box there.
Let's see.
If it's not in that box, I can just ask you
I
about it.
actually found it. Yes. Okay.
What is People's Exhibit 246?
This is labeled as package of 2 swabs from woman's black and white Nike shoe. And then there's some indications on the bottom, handwritten swabs from Nike shoes, laundry room, right shoe.
And so are those consistent with People's Exhibit 378, the Nike shoes that you just talked about?
Yeah, they actually were swabbed prior to being submitted into the lab. The outsole was swabbed.
And did you submit that on to DNA analysis?
I did this. I believe I actually tested it for the presumptive presence of blood. I did, and that was positive. So yes, and then a portion was submitted on for DNA analysis.
You need help getting rid of some of those
No,
exhibits?
I got it.
Next, I want to go to People's Exhibit. Well, before we leave 378, did you talk about all the areas you swabbed, both outside and inside of the shoe?
Let me just refer to my report. Okay, so the right shoe, I did swab the entire outsole of the right shoe that had reacted positive for the presumptive presence of blood, even in all of those little recessed areas as well. I did swab the right shoe lace as well. And then I took the trace swabs that we talked about for wearer DNA on the inside sole and the inside back heel area. The left shoe, I did not get any presumptive positives. They were all negatives. So I only did those trace swabs on the insole of the left shoe.
And were those individually packaged for DNA analysis? So when Donna Minogue did her DNA analysis, she knew exactly what she was doing based on your labeling.
Yes, I always label the swab wrappers with what I'm collecting. And then also the test tubes get the same itemization as well.
And does that apply to everything where you create a DNA packet? Do you label it so Donna Minogue, who does the DNA analysis, can then say, this is the item that Sherry Holes looked at?
Yes, that's their standard practice within the lab.
And next, I want to turn to People's Exhibit 459. Do you have that there?
I do.
What is People's Exhibit 459?
This is labeled as swabs of Blue Star presumptive positive reactions in garage and laundry room of 6627 Mandan Drive.
So what is the Blue Star? I know the jury has heard a lot about Blue Star, but what does Blue Star mean to you? And how do you treat that differently? For instance, a swab that says blood on the garage floor is A, B, and C said.
Sure. So Blue Star is another chemical presumptive test. It works in very much the same way as the chemical test I'm using in the lab. I use a different one, but it has the same process. Blue Star is used by our CSIs out at crime scenes, and it's typically used in areas in which they suspect there might be blood or they're looking to see if there's blood, but it's really not visible to them. And they can spray this reagent onto an area. It will react. It's very, very sensitive. It will react even if an area has been cleaned potentially. So it's chemiluminescent. Usually that's something that they do in a darkened room, and it's much like luminol. It glows, and they can take photographs of areas that are reacting. When they find a Blue Star positive area, then they swab it for us and they submit it into the lab. But because it's already gone through a chemical presumptive test, I don't need to now repeat another chemical presumptive test. It's already reacted positive to the Blue Star. It's the same process that my test would do. So when I get something labeled as Blue Star positive, my role is typically just to, like in this case, these are swabs, just go ahead and collect a portion of the swab into a test tube and forward it on for DNA analysis.
And is that what you did with 459?
Yes.
And did you do that with everything that was labeled Blue Star, at least swabbing of the Blue Star?
When things were swabbed, yes, there were a few items, larger items that said Blue Star positive that I did still, like carpeting, I did still do a visual exam, but swabs, I just took a portion. I didn't do further chemical presumptive testing.
So with regards to People's Exhibit 518, which should be the next exhibit, did you do the same things with that particular item?
Yes, this is labeled swabs of Blue Star positive reactions from the staircase between the main level and basement of 6627 Mandan Drive. Again, my role was just to take a sample using a scalpel, take off a small portion of the swabs, put them into the test tubes.
Is that 518 you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. And so let me, if I can approach her.
You may.
Sure.
Let's now jump to your March 17th, 2020 report. And I'm going to hand you what's been admitted into evidence as People's Exhibit 423.
Yes.
I can just hold it for you if you like.
Okay.
Do
Yes.
you recognize that?
I do recognize the label on it. I did not package it in this packaging, but yes, I recognize this is a plastic tub and lid with possible blood.
Did you examine this item?
I did.
Do you need to open it to look at it?
No, I don't.
Do you need me to open it?
No.
All right. What did you do with People's Exhibit 423?
This item was examined for the possible presence of blood, so I did do some visual examinations. That's how we always start all of our serology, and I did note that there was some red-brown staining on one short end of this plastic tub. on the tub and on the lid. I then did my chemical presumptive tests for blood, which were positive. I then took a number of different collections, swabs of these different blood stains or potential suspected blood stains, and those were then forwarded for the DNA analysis.
Can you just generally describe where you swabbed this item and how you labeled it for DNA analysis?
Sure. I collected, one collection was swabs of a suspected blood stain on the outside lip of the lid, short end of the tub with the label, meaning there was actually a sticker label on the tub. So I was differentiating that side from the other side, which did not have a sticker label. Second collection was swabs of suspected blood stain on outside corner of lid, short end of tub with label. The third collection was swabs of suspected blood stain on outside lip edge and side of container, short end of tub with label. And the fourth collection was swabs of suspected blood stain on the inside corner of the lid, short end of the tub with label.
And again, Donna Minogue would be able to know exactly what she's testing based on your labels.
Correct, yes.
We can go to your May 27th, 2020 report now. And I'll have you look at People's Exhibit 278, which should be in that box next to you there. Do you have that?
I do.
What is People's Exhibit 278?
This is labeled as one package of 2 swabs from the bed located on east wall of Gannon's room.
Did you test that item for blood?
I did, yes.
And what was your results?
Presumptive positive for blood.
And did you forward that on to DNA for DNA analysis?
Yes, I did.
Did you also conduct analysis on other swabs within that People's Exhibit 278?
This is one package of swabs. There was a separate item submitted called additional package of swabs from bed. I don't believe it's contained within this exhibit, but there was a separate item, which we have a separate barcode for, also from the bed, also positive for blood, or presumptive positive for blood.
And did that also go on to DNA analysis?
Yes, it did.
How about People's Exhibit 191? What is that, by the way?
This is labeled as a Brillo scrub brush.
And what did you do with that Brillo scrub brush?
I examined it visually for the possible presence of blood. I did note some staining on the brush, and I was then able to do get the positive presumptive test for blood, and then do some collections of the staining that could go for DNA analysis.
I'm assuming you forwarded that on to DNA analysis?
I did, yes.
Where did you see, where did it test positive for blood on that particular item? Do you have that in your notes?
I do. This particular item tested positive on this kind of, oh, actually you can see it. It's kind of a flat type scrub brush with a handle. It tested positive on the flat surface on that back side of the brush.
And did you see any indication that this item may have been washed?
May have been washed. Let me check my notes.
You can actually look at the exhibit. Can you see where that exhibit was recovered from?
It actually does not note. Let me see the notes on the. This one actually is just called Brillo scrub brush. That's all that it's denoted.
That's fine. How about People's Exhibit 192? Do you have that?
I do, yes.
What is People's Exhibit 192?
This one is called a blue and white scrub brush. Okay.
Go ahead and tell us what you did with that.
So also visually examined and did note staining on this scrub brush, which was positive for the presumptive presence of blood. I then was able to collect stains from 3 separate collections. I collected from the base of the scrub brush head, between and on the bristles. Suspected blood stains were also collected from the back of the scrub brush head, and suspected blood stain was collected on the actual scrub brush bristles themselves.
And did that get forwarded on to DNA for DNA analysis?
It did, yes.
How about People's Exhibit 193?
People's Exhibit 193 is labeled as scrub brush with possible hair and carpet fiber.
What did you do with that particular exhibit?
Same process. I did a visual exam, did note some suspected blood staining, and which reacted to the chemical presumptive test for blood. I then collected possible blood stains on the back of the flat scrub brush.
Went on to DNA for DNA analysis?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Next item is People's Exhibit 417. Do you have that up there?
I do.
What is People's Exhibit 417?
This is described as 3 sets of possible blood swabs, tested presumptive positive blue star, collected from basement living room carpet, pillow on north couch, and area rug.
And did you forward those 3 swabs on for DNA analysis?
Yes, these are 3 separate swabs from some blue star areas. These also were sampled, placed in the test tubes, forwarded on for DNA analysis.
People's Exhibit 519.
Okay, this item is labeled swabs of Blue Star presumptive positive reactions from basement. Let's see, base of stairs and southeast child's room.
And how many swabs total are in that particular exhibit?
Let's see. This particular exhibit has, let's see, 6 different collections in it.
I'm assuming those are packaged in 6 different tubes.
So of these, let's see, are they packaged in separate tubes when I do my packaging or how I receive them?
When you receive them.
So when I receive them, they typically are in, let me just check my notes. They actually were in 6 separate tape seal manila envelopes. And each of the envelopes then had a description of where it had been collected from.
And since these are Blue Star swabs, did you just prepare these for DNA analysis?
Yeah, my preparation is just to sample or cut a portion of a swab to forward it on to DNA analysis.
We can go to your June 17th report now and have you look at People's Exhibit 361.
Okay.
Well, I've got that here. If I can approach you.
You may go ahead.
Pull out suitcase that's been entered in evidence and speaking with it. 361. You recognize this item?
I do.
You need to put some gloves on, which I
Oh,
probably should put some.
I have
on.
gloves. Yeah,
Because I'd like to have you demonstrate where you swabbed this particular item, okay?
sure.
Eric, can the witness come out here and I'll hold this
That's
while
fine.
she does that? So, did you swab this item for blood?
I did on the inside of this.
Open this suitcase and show the jury where you swabbed it?
I noted staining in this area, this reddish brown staining, which did react to the presumptive test for blood, and this was the area that was swabbed.
You'll see staining there?
I can't.
Is that your circle that's on this suitcase?
Yeah, I circled the stain area. That's just for when I take photographs. I've also noted LMG positive. LMG is just shorthand for leukomalachite green. That's, I'm sorry, leuco, LEUC. That's too fast. It's the chemical presumptive test that I'm using in the lab. This LMG positive means it has reacted, and then I take photographs of this stain from various angles and with a scale. And I always like to have that notation in my photographs.
Are there other areas within this suitcase that you noted and swabbed?
There are other areas that I noted. I had seen other potential stains. Like, for example, there's one on the side lining. Actually, there's 2 that I have noted staining, but I circled and said LMG negative, meaning I did do the chemical presumptive test, but it did not react. So I don't swab stains that don't react to the presumptive test.
Just after
That's fine.
Did you forward these swabs from the suitcase on for DNA analysis?
Yes, I did.
Did you also look at a blanket, People's Exhibit 365?
I did, yes.
Can you show you People's Exhibit 365? I think you can just use this in the plastic if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
I'm going to hold it if you wouldn't mind coming.
Sure.
Can you see the areas where you swab this blue blanket? On the other side?
One on the dark blue side, on the light side, and the dark side. Okay. Yes. Yeah, that I can see it on this.
All right, I'll hold it while you point things out for the jury.
So I examined the entire blanket, and I did note in this area right here. And there's kind of some reddish brown staining, which I circled, multiple different stains that did react to that presumptive test for blood. So I actually took, you can kind of see these tiny little squares. That's where I took cuttings from this. Because it's together, I was able to combine those into one test tube. And so that's the only area sampled on the blanket for DNA.
Did that test positive for blood?
It did.
Do you know whether or not this blanket was inside this suitcase when it was recovered?
Yes, I did put that in my report. Blue blanket recovered from within suitcase.
And those swabs, again, were forwarded on for DNA analysis.
Yeah, those were cuttings put into a test tube that was forwarded for DNA analysis.
Now, we don't have an exhibit that's titled Gannon's fingernails, but did you have an opportunity to examine the fingernails from autopsy from Gannon Stauch?
I did, yes.
What did you do with those particular fingernails?
Just going to refer to my report and notes. Okay. So of the right hand, I received 2 entire fingernails. From the left hand, I also received 2 entire fingernails. Separately, I examined them and I did swab the undersides of the distal ends, meaning the ends furthest from, I guess, the knuckle. I did swab separately the right undersides and the left undersides of those fingernails. And for each case, for both the right hand and left hand, the swabs from underneath the fingernails were positive for the presumptive presence of blood.
And did you forward those on to DNA for DNA analysis?
Yes, I did.
And why did you do that?
Why did I forward or why did I
And
send them?
why were the fingernails that we knew came from Gannon forwarded on for DNA analysis? Do you know?
To look for the presence of possible foreign DNA, which may be on the fingernails.
I want to jump to your report dated March 17th. And do you have People's Exhibit 194 up there?
Yes.
What is People's Exhibit 194?
This is an empty plastic Heinz vinegar bottle.
And did you receive that bottle into your lab for analysis?
I did.
And what did you do with regards to that bottle?
Again, I was looking at this bottle for the possible presence of blood. I did note some faint light staining around the handle area of the bottle, which did test presumptive positive for blood. And that area was swabbed and then forwarded for DNA analysis.
You have People's Exhibit 435 up there? What is People's Exhibit 435?
This is People's Exhibit 679.
Okay, that's the next one.
I don't
Let me see.
have any more exhibits in here.
Well, let me just do it this way. Do you recall examining an Amazon box that had potential blood on it?
I do.
And was this Amazon box recovered from the storage room at 6627 Mandan Drive?
Yes.
What did you see when you got the box in your lab?
On one side of the box, there was some potential blood staining that visually looked like it could be blood. And I did do the chemical presumptive tests, which were positive for those stains on one side of the box, on the exterior side.
And did you forward those swabbings of those stains onto DNA for DNA analysis?
Yes, I did swab the stains and those did go on for DNA analysis.
And are they labeled in such a way that Donna Minogue would know where they came from when she got them?
Yes.
Okay. With regards to People's Exhibit 679, which I think you said you had up there,
Okay.
what is that and what did you do with it?
This is labeled as a white bed sheet with blue sharp print and hair and fabric received from laundry basket in closet of southeast basement bedroom. This particular sheet, I did look, do my visual exam. I did note one stain that did react to the presumptive tests for blood. And I took a cutting of that suspected blood stain on the bed sheet.
Your Honor, for the record, there is a stipulation to the admission of People's Exhibit 339, which is that chart that I had up by the jury earlier.
Defense, do you agree?
This is
Okay. Exhibit 339 is admitted.
request to publish.
You may go ahead.
Ms. Holmes, I'm going to show you Exhibit 339 first of all here. Did you help me prepare this particular exhibit?
I did.
And did Ms. Minogue also contribute to preparing this exhibit?
Yes, she did.
Can you just let the jury know what this exhibit is?
Yes, this is just a summary table of the different people's exhibit numbers with a description of the item. And we've gone through all of those today. And then for my purposes, it does have a column that lists what the serology results were as far as whether it was presumptive positive.
So for instance, where it says blue star in your column, would that be something you didn't test for blood because the blue star already eliminated there?
Correct.
And so did you contribute to the item and the serology aspect of this particular exhibit?
In preparing, yes, I confirmed with all of my reports that that is accurate. Correct.
And we'll be using this exhibit again with Ms. Minogue. don't have any further questions, Your Honor. Thanks.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cook.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Ms. Bowles? All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
Prosecution, call your next witness, please.
We call Donna Minogue.
Okay.
Can I just clean up the area up here a little bit?
Yeah, I didn't know how much of that you were still going to use here. Or...
Did you want help?
No, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Minogue, if you would step forward and raise your right hand, please, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead and have a seat in the witness stand. Please watch your step as you step into the stand.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
All right.
Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record and introduce yourself to the jury?
My name's Donna Minogue, and my last name is spelled Manogue. I'm currently a DNA analyst and serologist with the Colorado Springs Police Department Metro Crime Lab.
How long you been a DNA analyst? Analyst. Is that how you say that?
Analysis, yes. Analyst, actually.
Analyst.
Got that all wrong.
That was fast.
Yeah.
Fast.
I've been a DNA analyst since about 1999. Prior to working here at the CSPD Crime Lab, I retired from the Albuquerque Police Department Crime Lab doing the same type of job.
And how long have you been in that particular field prior to that?
I've been in the field of forensics for a little over 35 years, but in terms of serology and DNA, I would say since 1986.
What kind of training and experience do you have in that field of forensic DNA analysis?
The training experience that I have, again, is about 24 years, about close to 30 years in serology and DNA analysis, both with the Metro Crime Lab here and with the Albuquerque Police Department. Prior to this, I have experience training. I have on-the-job training by a qualified analyst in both locations because each location requires you to train in their particular procedures. It took about 2 years to train at Albuquerque Police Department because that's where I started. And it was probably about 4 to 6 months to train and come up to speed on their procedures here.
And do you have continuous training going on now every year?
I do. We are required by our accreditation board and our quality assurance standards to have at least 8 hours of training in developments in DNA, and I generally accrue about 40 to 60 hours a year.
And tell the jury a little bit about your educational background.
I have a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences I earned in 1981, and then I have a master's degree in the same field I earned in 1983. I also have continuing education beyond that, academic education, in terms of extra additional classwork that I took to help bolster my job qualifications in my prior years of employment and in my employment here.
And have you testified as an expert in the field of forensic DNA analysis in the past?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
I'm going to say approximately 30 times here in El Paso County. I've testified probably over 100 in Bernalillo County. That's in New Mexico, the county I worked in. And I've testified once, actually just once in federal court in California.
At this time, we ask that the court allow Ms. Minogue to be qualified as an expert in the field of forensic DNA analysis and render opinions in that field.
Defense?
No objection, Your Honor.
The witness will be so qualified. Go ahead.
The jury's heard a little bit about forensic DNA analysis, but it was from an expert from Florida.
Okay.
So can we give them the Colorado version of what forensic DNA analysis is?
Should be pretty similar. When you do forensic DNA analysis, you're looking for a transfer of body fluids from either an item to a scene to an item, person to person. So we're looking for a transfer of DNA that is contained in the cells in the body.
You say cells from our body. What kind of fluids do we get our DNA from?
You can obtain DNA profiles from almost any body fluid. Saliva and blood and semen are the most common, but you can also obtain DNA profiles from things like sweat and urine.
Blood?
Yes, did I not say blood?
I don't know.
Blood, semen, and saliva. I thought that was my first.
It's been a long day for me. I apologize. Yeah, well, my fault. No question about that. I want to talk about this case, the people of the state of Colorado versus Letecia Stauch involved in this investigation.
I was, yes, in terms of doing the DNA laboratory work.
I want to talk about known profiles first. What's a known profile?
A known profile is when you obtain a sample. It can be either a blood sample or it can be a saliva sample from an individual. So you're collecting it directly from them. So you know what their DNA profile is when you analyze it and obtain the profile.
Can you just let the jury know what a DNA profile is?
A DNA profile is a graphic representation of your genetic information at the locations that we examine in our laboratory.
And so how do we obtain these known profiles in a forensic setting in a criminal case, in a criminal investigation?
They're obtained, essentially, an investigator will provide known samples and they will be submitted to evidence. And then if it's on a request that I receive, I will analyze that.
Have you received things such as buccal swabs?
Yes, I have.
And is that a common way to develop a known profile for an individual who's alive, for instance?
That is a very common type of sample, yes.
And did you receive buccal swabs in this case?
I did, yes.
We're going to talk about those later on, but I really want to talk about, at least start out talking about how you were able to develop a profile for Gannon Stauch, especially before his body was discovered. Could you tell the jury about that?
Yes, because we had no body to source a profile from. I was provided with items that were common, thought to have been used by him. And one of the items that we obtained a profile from was from his toothbrush. And that was a male profile was developed from that.
And did you do anything to corroborate whether or not that profile actually belonged to Gannon Stauch?
Yes, we did. We did obtained standards from the biological mother and the biological father. And then we did a parentage statistic between the two parents and the profile we found from the toothbrush to determine if it was likely that those were the parents or this was the biological child of those two individuals.
And were you able to determine that?
Yes.
And what was your determination?
The determination was that that the profile from the toothbrush could not be excluded as having originated from the biological mother's standard and the biological father's standard that I found. And the probability of finding another individual with that profile, if you will, is the probability of including him as a biological offspring of those two is 99.9999, 10 nines after the %.
What does that mean?
It's a high likelihood that these are the biological parents of the profile from the toothbrush.
Once Gannon Stauch's body was discovered, March 17th, 2020, were you able to corroborate that finding through other materials?
I was through bone samples.
What bone samples did you get and what did you do?
I was provided with bone samples that were transferred or transported to the El Paso County Coroner's Office, and they prepared some bone sample and bone marrow sample for me because I don't have the means to break down a bone. So they provided me samples, and I took a portion of those samples, and the profile from the bone sample matched the profile from the toothbrush.
And was that bone sample from a femur bone that was created, or at least the DNA sample was created for you to examine from a Dr. Leon Kelly?
Correct.
He's a pathologist here in Coral Springs?
Yes.
Did you also get information with regards to what a DNA forensic analyst was doing out in Florida with regards to a rib bone belonging to Gannon Stauch?
My understanding is that they were attempting to obtain a profile, and they were putting it into like a database to determine, or as under the category of unidentified human remains. I don't know what the outcome of that entire thing was.
Did they reach out to you to confirm whether or not they had a match with regards to this rib bone that they did DNA analysis on in Florida?
We did, yes.
And was there a match with regards to what profile they obtained in Florida?
Yes, with the toothbrush sample.
Okay. And so the last item I want to talk to you about was Gannon Stauch's fingernails. Were you able to do DNA analysis on his fingernails as well?
I did perform DNA on the fingernails in an attempt to get a DNA type that would verify that a known DNA sample from him. I was not able to obtain full profiles on those samples.
Were you able to obtain enough to know whether or not there was a connection between his fingernails and the toothbrush, for instance?
Yes, I was.
And tell the jury about that. What did you find?
Well, I found a low-level DNA profile, but there was enough information to calculate a statistic on to match them to each other.
Based on everything you just talked about, is the profile that you obtained from the toothbrush in the beginning the DNA profile for Gannon Stauch?
Yes.
And is that the profile you used in your analysis of particular unknown items, particularly from 6627, Mandan Drive, and other areas with regards to the profile from Gannon Stauch?
That is the profile that I used until I obtained the bone sample profile, which was more, the toothbrush sample is what we consider a secondary standard, not knowing who the individual is, and the bone sample just verified that. But yes, I did use the toothbrush sample for comparison.
Okay. Did you also obtain some buccal swabs from the defendant, Letecia Stauch here, and obtain a DNA profile from those buccal swabs?
Yes, I did.
And did you also use that in your analysis when you're comparing knowns to unknowns?
Correct.
At this time, I'd like to publish People's Exhibit 339 on the TV screen, just so everyone can see it as we're talking about
From prosecution over here.
We're going to put People's Exhibit 339 up, which is a chart that's already in evidence. You may recognize it from the TV screen. Did you help contribute to making this chart?
Yes, I did.
And is this a good summary of the items that you tested with the results that you have on those particular items?
It is, yes.
I know we're giving away the answer early on this exhibit, but I think it's helpful for the jury to kind of follow us as we talk about particular things. The first item up there is Exhibit 386, which are swabs from the garage, placards A, B, and C. Do you recall that?
Yes.
When you get those items, what did you do and how did you do your DNA analysis on those particular items?
Well, the swabs were already prepared for me during the serology examination. So what I end up with for the DNA examination is essentially an envelope of tubes with a corresponding number to them, and then I match them back up when I write the report. So I just simply did DNA analysis on these swabs.
What did you find with regards to the swab from placard A?
The swab from placard A, the major profile matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And when you say major profile, why do you describe it as a major profile?
Because in that particular sample, I had a mixture of more than one individual, and I was able to parse out a major contributor to that according to our standardized operating procedures. I was able to pull out a major profile, and that major profile matched Gannon Stauch.
And do you have any standards on how you determine whether or not a mixture you can determine a major profile? How many contributors need to be in there for you to do that analysis?
In order to pull out a major profile, I have to follow our standard operating procedure, which is written up. It's called a mixture interpretation policy. And essentially, the major contributor has to be 2.5 to 3 times higher than the other contributors in that mixture. So by following my standard operating procedure, I was able to pull out a major profile.
How many contributors were in this mixture with regards to placards?
I would have to check my report for that.
Sure, that would refresh your recollection.
Yes.
Top of page.
From
Yeah.
swab A, I had a mixture of 2 contributors, one of which was male. That major profile, the major male profile matched Gannon Stauch.
And we know this is at least presumptively blood. Is blood a very enriched item that has DNA in it?
It's a very rich source of DNA, yes.
Is it common, for instance, when you're swabbing a garage floor, or for the instance, this podium, you might find several different profiles on it?
You could, yes.
Is the fact that it may be blood, would that contribute to Gannon being the major profile in this 2-person mixture?
I can't say that the DNA, I can only tell you that because it was presumptively positive for blood, we know there's a good indication that there's blood in here, but I can only tell you that the major profile is attributable to Gannon Stauch.
What about placard B?
Placard B, that was also a mixture of 2 contributors, one of which was male, and the major male profile matched Gannon Stauch at, again, estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And so when the jury has this chart back in deliberations, People's Exhibit 339, where it says major profile matches Gannon, is that always going to be a mixture?
Not necessarily. A major, yes. When you hear the term major, that means that the DNA profile was a mixture, but that a major was able to be parsed out of that.
Whereas we get to placard C where it says matches Gannon. Tell us about placard C.
Placard C was a single source male profile, and that profile matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And so when there's a single source profile with People's Exhibit 339, indicate that item matches Gannon.
Correct.
Just so we're clear. So mixtures, you'll see the word major profile.
Yes,
Source, you'll just see match.
correct.
You've thrown out the probability. You said 1 in 3.4 octillion. Is that what you said?
Correct.
What does that mean? What does that mean to this jury?
An octillion is a 3, for instance, we just rounded off to 3 octillion. That's a 3 followed by 27 zeros.
And why do we do that?
It's to give you an indication of the uniqueness of the profile, how often each of the alleles occur in the general population.
And so is it also to confirm that that is in fact Gannon's blood in placard C on the garage floor?
We don't provide source attribution. We don't say this profile originates from. We provide you with the fact that it's a match and the statistic that gives you an indication of the uniqueness of the profile.
I hate when lawyers ask you that, don't you?
Yes.
I won't ask you again. Okay. Let's go to People's Exhibit 503, which is labeled Carpet 1 from Gannon's room. What did you do with that and what did you find?
Again, this was in a tube already prepared for me, and it was extracted or examined. It was analyzed for the DNA profile. And that's 506, you said, or 503?
It's People's Exhibit 503, so it would be in your report.
Cutting from the
It'd be
top of the
carpet.
carpet?
Yep, right.
Yes, that cutting from the top of the carpet was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And did you also do a DNA analysis on the padding, or at least a cutting from the padding with regards to that same carpet?
The cutting from the padding was the same result, a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
We can go now to People's Exhibit 503, which is labeled there on 339 as face of outlet cover for Gannon's room. Did you recall getting a cutting or a DNA kit with regards to that item?
This was a swab, and that's 512.
People's Exhibit 512, yes.
Yes, I thought you said 503. These were swabs of a stain from the face of the outlet cover and the inside edge of the plug window. And I analyzed one of the samples that was prepared in a tube for me. And that was a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which is male. The major male profile matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
So this is another 2-person mixture. How do you know at least one is male? What do you do to determine?
There are 3 areas on the DNA, on our DNA graphic printout, that tells us if there's a male present. One is actually a location on the Y chromosome. The other is the sex chromosomes, the X and Y. If I see a Y, I know there's a male. And there's also another area on the Y chromosome that's present if a male is present.
And the next item on 339 is People's Exhibit 516, which is a swab of the electrical socket in Gannon's room. What did you find with regards to that?
That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And then People's Exhibit 504 is carpet 2 from Gannon's room. What did you find with regards to that?
That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And is that as high as you can go as far as the frequency?
No.
You can go higher than that. Huh?
Yes.
How high can you go?
It depends on what the alleles are because it's based on the frequency of occurrence of a particular allele.
That makes so much sense to me.
It's based on the DNA profile. If people have rare DNA profiles, because sometimes we do, like they'll have a rare reading at a location, so the frequency of occurrence of that is less, which makes the statistic higher.
Okay. The padding, I'm assuming, is the same for carpet 2?
Yes, the padding is the same, a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with a frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
Now, the next item is People's Exhibit 332, if I may approach, Your Honor.
May go ahead.
With regards to People's Exhibit 332, did you actually do the serology on this item as well?
I did the serology on this, yes.
I'm going to hand it to you in this second. Show you the bag first.
Okay. I recognize it because I recognize the barcode label that's on there and my initials and date when I resealed it is on there as well.
And now I'll show you the board.
Yes,
Does it show here where you did your serological examination?
yes,
Did I say that right?
serological.
I'm doing the best I can.
That's your
All right, so permission to publish to the jury.
You may go ahead.
And if you wouldn't mind stepping out and just showing the jury where you took your swabs or what you did with regards to this board.
The first thing I did is I noted possible blood staining. We call it red brown staining until we identify it as presumptively positive for blood. So I've got an area marked here that is dark red brown staining. I've also got a lot of little dots located that I did not test these dots because they're too small and I was afraid I was going to consume them. Thought is if we're going to process them for DNA, we need to take them straight to DNA without any processing. So this one here was positive for the presumptive presence of blood. And then at a later time, I swabbed these 2 areas because they fluoresced with using an alternate light source. So I took a swab from here, swab from here, a swab from here, and then I swabbed the edges of the board, wondering if anybody had handled the board. So I took 4 samples total.
While we're up here, with regards to 339, we see 332 on the board. You said it's presumptive positive for blood. What swab are we talking about that actually matches Gannon?
That is this large stain here.
Did you find anything with regards to your other swabs?
I did. I have a feeling I have to go review my report.
That's fine. We can put this down ahead to do that.
From the swabs from the edges of the board that I was looking for if somebody had handled it, it was a mixture of, it's a partial profile, which means I don't have all the information on the DNA profile. And it's a mixture of at least 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. And the profile was not suitable for comparison because it was too low level.
And why is it that you did the serology on this particular board and the DNA analysis?
It was the weekend and I was the only one available.
Was there some urgency with this particular exhibit?
Yes,
Okay. And you did it quickly and to get it back to the sheriff's office?
yes.
The next item we see on 339 is People's Exhibit 378, Nike shoes from washer. Do you see that?
Yes,
Now, you didn't actually get the shoes, but did you get swabs that were related to that shoe?
I did. I got swabs that Sherry Holes, the serologist, collected. She did the presumptive testing and collected, and I did the DNA analysis.
Let's talk about the swabs of the outsole of the right Nike shoe. What did you find there?
The swabs from the outsole of the right Nike shoe matched, it was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
What happens to DNA when you place items in a washing machine and wash them?
It depends on the nature of the stain. It depends on a lot of things. It also depends on how heavy the deposit is. Some of the DNA can be washed off. Sometimes all of the DNA can be washed off.
It just depends on what happens, right? And with these particular shoes, did you see anything that may have diluted the DNA profile, or can you even?
I didn't see the shoes, so I don't know.
Did you give a statistical analysis with regards to the swabs of the outsole of the right Nike shoe?
Yes, that was an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
Let's go to swabs of the bottom sole of right Nike shoe. What did you see there?
That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
The next item says swabs of inside sole of Nike shoe. What did you find with regards to that particular swab?
That was a mixture again, and I was able to parse out a major profile, and the major profile matched Letecia Stauch with an estimated, or at least it matched at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 28 billion.
And do you understand why Sherry Holes would swab the inside of the sole of the Nike shoes?
Yes.
What was that for?
For potential wearer.
And do you know how many contributors there were to this particular mixture?
I can check. From the interior, is this the left shoe? Yeah, the left shoe. It was a mixture of 2 contributors, one of which was male.
We can scroll down now, please, on 339. One more, please, up. So now we're on the swabs of the inside sole of the right Nike shoe. What did you find there?
The swabs from the inside sole of the right Nike shoe is a mixture of 2 contributors, one of which was male. The major profile matched Letecia Stauch at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 730 septillion.
Do you know what kind of body fluids, or what kind of cells we're looking at with regards to these 2 swabs of the inside of the Nike shoe?
You're looking mostly for skin cells that have kind of rubbed off or fallen off over the course of time.
Would sweat be a good contributor to that?
Well, sweat can contain skin cells in it, but sweat is actually a liquid. And if there are cells in the liquid, then you're obtaining a DNA profile from the actual cells, not from the liquid.
Okay. The next item we see on People's Exhibit 339 is People's Exhibit 459, which is swabs from base of box and garage south of boards. What did you find with regards to that?
That was a partial single source profile that matched Gannon Stauch at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 87 quadrillion.
And what does partial single source profile mean?
Partial means that I'm only seeing evidence of one person in this particular DNA sample, but I'm not able to, the technology is not able to detect some of the locations because it's just a low level of DNA. I don't have enough DNA.
And so for the jury's, in my benefit, quite frankly, you've got the profile from the toothbrush, Gannon's profile.
Yes.
You've got a profile from the swabs of this box in the garage.
Yes.
One profile has all the, are they called alleles?
Loci.
Loci.
Alleles, so loci would be better. It's like the locations on the DNA.
The unknown may not have all the same locations, but enough for you to call it a match.
Correct.
Is that fair?
Yes.
We can now go to 518, which is swabs base of stairs and garage under cord. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did you test that for DNA analysis?
I did, and I obtained a profile that was a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon Stauch at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.8 quintillion.
We're just going to go down the list. People's Exhibit 190 or 278. Do you see that?
Yes.
Swabs from Gannon's bed, which was presumptively positive for blood. What did you find there?
The swab from Gannon's bed was a partial profile, a single source male that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 450 sextillion.
Exhibit 192, a blue and white scrub brush head bristles.
The blue and white scrub brush was a mixture of at least 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon Stauch at the interpretable loci with a statistic or an estimated frequency of 1 in 120 septillion.
People's Exhibit 193, quickie scrub brush backside.
That was a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon Stauch at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 2.3 trillion.
Then we have 191, a red and white Brillo scrub brush top flat surface. What did you find with regards to that?
That I obtained only a partial DNA profile that was not suitable for comparison, but there was one male. It's a profile of at least one male.
Was that a mixture or was it a single source?
My conclusion was at least one male, so we're thinking it could possibly be 2, but thinking it's 1.
And could that be impacted with regards to that particular item if it had been washed in a dishwasher? Would that impact the DNA that may be on it?
Yes.
Is that obvious why that might happen?
Well, a dishwasher obviously washes dishes like a washing machine, but contained in the soap and that whatever additives you put in the dishwasher, there's bleach in that soap, and that can break down the DNA.
The next item we see on 393 is People's Exhibit 361, peak suitcase from South Carolina, mesh lining inside. What did you find there?
That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
How about 365, the blanket from the suitcase that was found inside?
That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
The next item we have on there, it says teal couch pillow from basement. And just so we're clear, if we skip one item down where it says Blue Star swabs from pillow on north couch in basement, do you know if that's the same item?
I believe it's the same item. One was collected at the scene by the crime scene investigator, and the other was collected by Sherry Hulls.
What did you find with regards to, let's just cover all 3 items, 417 at once, which are swabs from the Blue Star. What did you find with regards to those swabs?
One of them was from a basement area rug, and I found a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major male profile matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion. The minor was attributable to an unknown individual, and I gave it a number 1.
Why did you give it a number 1?
Because when you find an unknown profile that you don't have a standard to compare it to, you just start counting. So this was the first one.
And is that common to see unknown profiles when you're talking about mixtures?
Yes.
If you don't have a known profile, you have nothing to compare.
Yes.
Since in this particular case, did you ever get a known profile from Letecia Stauch, the 8-year-old girl that lived there?
No, I did not.
Common for people who live in the house to leave their DNA series.
Yes.
So let's go down to the next item, which is Blue Star swabs from pillow on north couch in basement. What did you find?
I believe this was one collected by the CSI because of the Blue Star identifying information. That was that DNA profile was a mixture of 3 contributors, 3 male contributors actually. The major profile matched Gannon Stauch at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 100 septillion, and the minor was not suitable for comparison.
And the cutout carpet with burn marks?
That DNA profile was a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
The next item we see there is People's Exhibit 423, and we have 4 items there. Plastic tub from storage room, outside lip swab. And I don't want to read them all, but what did you find with regards to this plastic tub, People's Exhibit 523, swabbing that was submitted to you for DNA?
There were 4 separate swabs. First were the swabs with the stain on the outside lip of the lid, the short end of the tub with a label from the basement. That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion. I have a second one, swabs of the stain on the outside corner of the lid from the short end of the tub with a label from the basement. That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion. Then I have a swab of a stain on the outside lip edge and into the side of the container on the short end of the tub in the basement. That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion. And then lastly, I have a stain on the inside corner of the lid on the short end of the tub with a label from the basement. That was a single source male profile that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
People's Exhibit 519 looks like it's 2 more Blue Star swabs that we see on People's Exhibit 339.
Yes.
One is Blue Star swabs from storage room 4. What did you find with that one?
That was a DNA profile was a mixture of 2 contributors, at least one of which was male. The major male profile matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
And now with regards to the blue star items that we see on 339, do you know what substance that is that you're testing for DNA?
It's just an area that reacted to the Blue Star reagent that they use out on the field. The Blue Star is a presumptive test for blood.
But you're just testing whatever they swab, right?
Correct.
You're basing the blue star on what they label that swab activity?
Correct. It was described as Blue Star positive, so we maintain that throughout the report.
The blue star swabs from base of stairs and basement, what did you find?
That was a mixture of two contributors, at least one of which was male. The major male profile matches Gannon Stauch at the interpretable loci with an estimated frequency of 1 in 170 septillion.
We can go ahead and scroll all the way down to the bottom. We should get the rest of them in. And then we have People's Exhibit 194, swab from exterior and opposite of handle, inner and bottom. What did you find?
That was a mixture of two contributors, one of which was male. The major profile matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 52 septillion, and the minor was attributable to unknown individual number one.
Same comment as we talked about before.
Correct.
You didn't have a known profile to match to.
Correct.
People's Exhibit 435, swabs from exterior of Amazon box from storage room, 3 stains. What did you find?
For all 3 stains, they were all single source male profiles that matched Gannon Stauch with an estimated frequency of 1 in 3.4 octillion.
So you did a test on all 3 of these different DNA samples?
Correct. And the DNA profile and the statistic is the same for all 3.
Now, you tested a lot more items than what we just displayed in People's Exhibit 339. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are these the items that you were able to identify Gannon Stauch to or the defendant to with regards to your DNA testing?
Yes.
Are there other items that you were not able to obtain a profile to or were not able to come to a conclusion with that were not presented to this jury?
Yes, there were.
Those are my questions, Your Honor. Thanks.
Council approach for a moment.
Could you leave that up just for whoever the controller is over there? Hi, how are you? My name is Will Cook. I represent Ms. Stauch in this case. I've just got some follow-up questions for you, ma'am. Not a lot. If you could look at 194 on the chart, and for the DNA part, it says major profile matches Gannon. Do you see that? Or
Yes,
or you can turn around.
Yes.
So Mr. Young discussed this with you. So there's more than one DNA sample floating around in this sample.
There's evidence of 2 individuals in this mixture.
Okay. You fully developed the other sample or the other DNA contributor or the other profile, I guess the minor profile?
When a sample is in a test tube and I develop a profile and I obtain the graph, this is what I get. There's no more developing portions of a profile. I develop a profile, and this one happened to be a mixture, and I have an unknown individual identified as the minor contributor.
Okay. So you're not looking at this number 194 and going, well, the major profile matches Gannon and the minor one is Letecia Stauch or father or mother or anything like that.
They are compared to all of the standards that I have in the case, and I was not able to say that it matched any of the standards that I had in the case, which is why the minor was identified as unknown individual number 1.
Okay. So the matches on this whole chart we just went over, the couple matches with Letecia Stauch involve the Nike running shoe.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Now, some of these tests or the samples were collected very on in the investigation, the winter, spring of 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And some of them, like the last one up here, Exhibit 435, the Amazon box, there was no request made for the DNA testing on that until maybe 2 years after this homicide, correct?
I don't know when the request, I do actually have the request here. I can tell you when the request was put in on March 28th, 2022.
Okay. I have a request date for January 27th, 2022, with the report date of March 17th of 2022.
Oh, my error. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're correct. It's January 27th, 2022. I was reading the due date.
Okay. So there's a 2-year difference in between the early samples that were taken to the final ones that were taken and ultimately DNA tested, correct?
I don't know when the boxes were submitted originally to evidence
Okay.
or the items on this particular report. They may have been in evidence the whole time, and we were just asked to go back and examine these as well. I can't answer that.
Okay. I think that is probably it. Just a second. As one of your, who were the standards you were using? You had Letecia Stauch,
Yes.
Gannon,
Yes.
Gannon's father,
Yes.
Gannon's mother,
Correct.
Gannon's sister, Lena.
No, I did not have that standard.
You didn't have Lena?
No.
Okay. Did you have a Harley Hunt?
No.
Who, do you know who Harley Hunt was?
No.
You didn't know that that was Leticia's daughter that was living in the house?
No.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Redirect.
No, thank you.
Do any of the jurors have any questions for Ms. Minogue? Doesn't look like it. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Minogue, you can go ahead and step
Okay,
down. I'm
thank
sorry,
you.
ma'am.
That's right.
Together there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are again in the same position that we were earlier today, and that is that we do not have any other witnesses to fill the day. We anticipate, however, that the witnesses will be here tomorrow. Therefore, they are traveling. So if I can have everyone back in the morning at the same place, same time, we should be able to start on time at 9 o'clock. Again, don't discuss the case among yourselves. Don't discuss the case with anyone else. Don't do your own independent research about any aspect of this case. Don't go looking up what septillion and quadrillion and all of that stuff means. I know everybody wants to get home and do that. You simply can't. So we'll see everybody tomorrow at the regular time. All rise for the jury, please.